What's going on, everybody? How are y'all doing this evening? So, you can probably tell, but I mean, we've got a lot of changes here. Where not only are we obviously talking about Chicago Bears' brand new head coach, Matt Eberflus, and everything that goes with that, but we're also talking about, I guess at least we could talk a little bit about how the background has changed. I'll be tidying this up, trying to make it look a little bit better than this. But me and my wife just moved into a brand new house the other day, so we're still getting things set up. Took me a little bit. Got back from the Senior Bowl a couple days ago, so I got the chance to go cover some draft stuff live, which was really, really cool. Gave me a sweet looking notepad. That is some official looking Senior Bowl gear. I'll keep that around basically forever, and a hoodie as well. So it's been fun overall. Oh yeah, Sean, it is spacious, thankfully, which the hope is that we'll get a green screen up there so that I can make a little bit more quick fire content. So things that you guys have seen me do in those studio style videos, but the hope would be that I can make more of them, because the aim is to just make sure that the only thing on the channel doesn't become streams eventually. I know there are plenty out there, and hey, if anybody starts the video and hears it, know that my heart is with you, that don't just want this to be a streaming channel. I'm with you. But this topic stayed just a little bit long in the tooth. Wanted to make sure we got at least an overview out so that when I go back through, potentially make a video on this exact subject, a lot of y'all will already know what's going on. Right, Akusai? Exactly. I got the Senior Bowl hoodie. Now I'm basically Bill Belichick. I would cut the sleeves off if I didn't pay $75 for it, but that's the way of things, isn't it? Yeah. Thanks so much, Bob. We're really excited about the house. We've got other stuff that we can talk about in the family world later, but we'll get to that another day. The neat thing is that the Bears hired a new head coach, and thank goodness they did, because I don't know how you guys felt at the very end of the season last year, but I got tired of talking about the same things over and over. It wasn't the defensive scheme that really drove everybody mad. I know we all know this, right? But whether we were watching Andy Dalton's offense, Nick Foles' offense, which, hey, at least in that one, we converted some third downs, or Justin Fields' abysmal offensive performances, at least for the first half of the season. And hey, some cool stuff that he did in the back half, but to call it a journey is to undersell just how it felt to really start that out. But now we've got now we've got a brand new head coach. We've got a brand new offensive coordinator. We've got a brand new lot of things. But I feel like we have to start with the obvious place to start, right? Where we are going to go through the ideals, the philosophy behind Matt Eberflus's Colt defense, so that whether you like it or not, you can at least get to know the head coach that we're about to have. Because, look, the key isn't that I'm going to tell you what Eberflus did on the Colts, and you're going to expect them to do exactly the same thing, right? Here, we're going to be watching first a Week 16 game against the Cardinals, and then after that, we're going to watch a Week 2 game against the Rams. Originally, I was going to do the opposite. Yes, Kyle, I will absolutely address that, because I want to talk about everything to do with Eberflus. Not everybody has the patience to watch a 4-hour video, but for those of you that do, we're going to really get there. And yeah, I'm with you, Jordan. I completely hear that. Not to mention, Jordan, I know you're a fan of a lot of cover 1, cover 3, middle field close defenses. And one thing I certainly think is interesting about Eberflus is that in the world of coverages, I feel like he kind of delivers a little bit of everything, right? There's a little something for everyone in Eberflus's defenses, especially given the way that he likes to. Look, I'll start out strong, right, as we get into the introductions. The big key that I have seen in Matt Eberflus's defenses across a couple of games is that you will get basically like a 3-down cadence, right? He likes on first down, let's go first, he's going to play a 1-high look. And he may rotate out of this. So at any point, they may rotate out of these things. But generally speaking, he's going to start with 1-high, and he's going to put an extra guy in the box, usually. Even if it means that second safety is coming down, so on and so forth. He likes to start, at the very least, threatening 1-high and going from there. So on second down, pretty much not only is it 2 high, but it's almost always cover 2. So we'll talk about cover 2, the differences between cover 2, cover 4, cover 6, and so on and so forth. Like we'll get there because it's not just one coverage over and over. But the key that you need to know is that Eberflus will line up the same way so that he can style other things off of them. He wants you to expect a one high look on first down. He wants you to expect a two high look on second down, especially when the defense is ahead of the chains. That's especially where he likes to drop into that two high, or like a cover 2 especially, and usually he'll rotate out of something else to get there. We'll be there soon. And then on third down, he likes to play man and he likes to blitz. But honestly, before I get too high on irony there, before I get too crazy telling you guys that he's a big blitzer, you got to remember that this Colt defense that we're talking about is also quite literally, okay, so great, we've seen all that, we'll erase that. We are talking, just to be sure we're all on the same page, about the worst pressure defense in the NFL. We're talking about the second worst pressure creating defense in the NFL. And we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the sixth worst or sixth lowest percentage of blitzes in the NFL, which is not to say that all of this is bad. We'll get into the merits and demerits of any of this. But the big key that I'm trying to make clear is that Matt Eberflus is very judicious about when he blitzes, and frankly, I would say that the big weakness that he had in Indianapolis is that his edge rushers were not near as talented as they are in Chicago. Like, honestly, just starting there, just giving you a peek into the corner of the personnel pool, the Colts could not generate coverage. They were somebody who I'm really high on. Obviously, DeForest Buckner is DeForest Buckner, but I also really like Grover Stewart, the guy that plays next to him on the interior, more the one technique. But outside of that, I mean, their edge rushers did not do well. And so, like, all right, and you're right, Akusai. Our pressure rates were pretty below average. I mean, it's not like the Bears, edge rushers were crazy, but they have a lot more talent in Khalil Mack, Travis Gibson, and Robert Quinn than I think the Colts did. And being able to, at the very least, threaten with 4 is something that Eberflus is going to want to do. Though, as I'm sure you guys probably can guess, I'm not a huge fan of investing a bunch into this defense right now. The Bears don't have a ton of resources, and I don't know if they can quite get there. But as long as you understand that general cadence, first down, you're looking at 1 high. Second down, you're looking at 2 high. But a lot of 2 high looks either way. And then third down, you're looking at man. You'll understand, or at the very least see, that one of the coolest things that Eberflus's defense is all about is disguise. I'm going to fit this word in. There we go. He's going to disguise all over the place, whether it's safeties going from here to here at the snap, whether it's a full-on Okie roll to get one guy over here and another over there, whether it is a man-matching safety that then drops out here, moves over there. The safeties in particular are going to move all over the place in this defense, which I actually am really excited about, because if Eberflus can get this kind of, I literally have to go back and look, because the safeties did not stand out to me when I watched a bunch of these different games. But if Matt Eberflus can get second string safeties playing fairly good defense, as you'll see, I'm really excited for what he can do with Eddie Jackson, and hopefully a kid like JT Woods, somebody out of the draft next to him, not super high on signing a free agent safety. Maybe I just don't trust the Bears to identify a free agent safety, because I think safeties can be kind of hard to scout sometimes. But I am very, very excited to see what happens here. And I want to show you guys what it is that we're looking at. So the Cardinals started off pretty well in this. Remember, we're watching week 16, so injuries have nicked at the Colts. Darius Leonard's not playing in this game, for instance. But you'll get the chance to see that on first down in particular, they like to play another position I should highlight before we really start to dive into this, right? But the Colts' number one position that changes a lot is this. It's called the Sam linebacker. And then in other defensive looks, it's your nickel corner. So they'll have a slot corner, a nickel corner, like that's the same player, and then they'll have a Sam linebacker. So the Sam is more of a run supporter, right? And then the nickel corner is obviously more of a pass player, but they'll stay inside on the or like they'll both stay inside, so they both need to be able to do a little bit of what the other does. The Sam can't be completely useless in pass coverage. Nobody can be at this point. And the nickel corner can't be totally pass coverage and not at all run support, or else they'll get run over, especially on second downs. Colin, is Roquan still the Mike linebacker? I think that's a good question, honestly. It's going to depend on who the Bears can get, because to make sure, or to speak to Colin's point, the two major linebacker positions that aren't the Sam are the Will, that's Darius Leonard, D. Leo, we'll just write that. And then they have the Mike. And they have Bobby Okereke playing this, right? But I don't know if anybody actually knows who Bobby Okereke is. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys do. But the point is, and the main responsibility that you need to know is the will linebacker functions like most weak inside linebackers. That's what that stands for. They are more of a free player. They're the backside of the passing strength, and a lot of times they take on the running back. So it's not dissimilar to what the Bears have been doing with Roquan Smith. And frankly, it won't surprise me if that's where Smith plays. The question is, what are they going to do at Mike linebacker? Because I don't think you can trot out, say, Alec Ogletree and still be successful within the context of this defense at that Mike spot. Now, I don't think, because I see Bob saying Roquan will be Derek Brooks in this system. I think Roquan's already really good. Like, I don't necessarily think this system will elevate him compared to what Desai did, because in my opinion, Sean Desai's defense did a good job of moving Roquan all over the place. And I mean, just to give you guys an example, Roquan Smith is one of the single best anti-running back linebackers in football, if not the best. Like, as far as linebackers that are able to square up against an Alvin Kamara, against a Tariq Cohen, against name any running back, Austin Eckler, so on and so forth, Roquan will just take them out of the game. It's phenomenal what he can do. But I think a lot of people are going to continue to avoid him until they have to deal with him. The biggest problem that I personally think, hey Mason, great to see ya. The biggest problem that I see the Bears having right now, before we get into anything, right, is that schematically speaking, this is not a defense that will force you, if this is Jalen Johnson, right, and this is Eddie Jackson. Oh, great. We'll just write the E there. Eddie Jackson, and this is Roquan Smith, and this right here is Thomas Graham. Like, if you've got those four, but this guy, and this guy are still Tashawn Gibson, a random guy that we found, and Kindle Vildor, like Alec Ogletree, I don't think that this defense is going to suddenly make them shine. The Bears do need to bring that bottom up a little bit. And frankly, that's something that if you want to critique Sean Desai, I don't think Sean got his worst players playing any better by the end of the season. Does that make sense? Where I do think that Sean Desai, his scheme was really solid, but in terms of elevating a lot of the guys that they had, say Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson in particular, I thought they played a lot better at the start of the season, as did Khalil Mack, as did Alec Ogletree. Frankly, that's where you got the best Kindle Vildor of the season until later. And then things started to fall off. And yes, Case, we were 4 in total yards, but come on, total yards? Are we really going there? Just especially once we saw what San Francisco just ripped the Bears open by the end of the season. But anyways, Jordan asked a good question. Am I going to miss Desai? I think I'm going to miss Desai's scheme more than I'm going to miss Sean Desai specifically. I mean, you think about the way that Sean Desai operated. I'm going to steal the words out of a friend of mine, Brandon Robinson, like out of his mouth. But Sean Desai, especially near the end of the season, started letting players kind of do whatever they wanted to. And when Eddie Jackson is clearly asking you if he can play like slot, and then he's playing slot corner, that's great. But the Bears aren't paying Eddie Jackson $15 million million to play slot corner and be all right at it. It's amazing that anybody with the safety body type can play slot corner. I think so at any decent level, but still, like, let Eddie Jackson be a safety. Let Jalen Johnson be a cover 2, cover 4 corner. Like, there's a whole bunch of the stuff that Desai and the rest of the Bears defense started doing near the end of the season. Why? And it's not like we saw anybody necessarily develop that wasn't already on a development path. For instance, I'd tip my hat more to Jay Rodgers when it comes to guys like Deshaun Gibson than somebody like Sean Desai. I liked Desai's scheme. I will say that as many times as I can. I just don't know if he was the coach that a lot of people, or that I necessarily wanted him to be. And yeah, Kusai's right. I mean, whatever the Bears trotted out, it worked against Glennon and the Giants. That's for sure. But overall, I do appreciate the idea, whether people think it's corny or not, of Matt Eberflus's hustle-based defense coming in, because it's not the world's most... This is not the brainiest scheme in the world. In fact, as you're going to see, it's primarily an execution-based defense, but I want you to just keep an eye on guys like 45. That might be 45 right there. Literally, his name is EJ Speed, and both safeties are backups, and that's Kenny Moore. He's not a backup, but I think this outside corner is a backup by the end of the season. Like, what you're going to see is that Desai got his second stringers playing at a pretty high level, and they're still running around disguising things. I mean, this game is a good example. Again, we're going to watch the Rams game after, where you're going to see the weakness of it, because Sean Desai did a pretty good job of just tearing up a Colts defense that did not have a ton of talent on it, that's for sure. But this basically ended up being, at least in my opinion, it ended up being a defense that was Darius Leonard, Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Moore, the nickel corner, and that was kind of it. But, oh man, Jordan, that's cool. I honestly don't know enough about Kyrie Willis, but I do know that he got smoked a couple times in that Rams game. But anyways, as far as Thomas Graham working with the cover 2-4, yes. One thing that will be really interesting, somebody mentioned cornerback in particular. If there was a defense that de-emphasizes cornerbacks, it's this one, which is a strange thing to say, right? But anytime you're playing cover 2, so just to make sure everybody knows what it is, right? Because the Colts right now are definitely in your classic cover 2 alignment, where you've got one guy dropping into a zone, usually the outside corner there. The linebackers are going to basically build a little wall right here with 2 deep zones behind them. Now, obviously, as I'm sure you guys know from all the time that the Bears spent with Lovie Smith, this linebacker can be in a lot of different places. Like, he can move all the way back to closer to here in what they call that Tampa 2, like a deep middle zone. He can play up in the shallow. There are a lot of places that linebacker can play in a classic cover 2. But the reason that this would de-emphasize the cornerback is because the cornerback has a lot less space that they have to cover than usual. Right? When you talk about a cover 3 defense, for instance, usually the corner would have to drop to there. This safety, let's say, would rotate over. You don't really run a cover 3. You know what? Hang on. We'll do like a cover 3 with sort of a robber look underneath. So if you did that, the corner has to watch the flat right here. And then as they fade backwards. So you end up with quite a bit of ground that they have to cover in these settings, whereas in more of that cover 2, they've got a little bit more of a limited responsibility, because if they get beat over the top, you've got a safety sitting behind you right here. So let's say the route is a vertical, you pass it to the safety. If the route is more of an in-breaker, you pass it to that inside linebacker, right? And if they curl, obviously there you are, but it's more to say that the corner has to watch that outside file a little bit more, that outside short file, instead of having to cover a vertical file as well, unless there's like, for instance, 2 guys here where if both of them go vertical, you're going to see that corner turn and run, because any space that's coming out here, the linebacker's going to go meet to find. But anyways, you see a lot of this sort of thing. This exact classical cover 2, just watch the way that 58 over here is responding to what he sees. This linebacker right here, where Oh, sorry. I was looking at 44. But the point is, when you watch this defense, they're going to leave the fact that Arizona's got two over here with one guy. I mean, it's a cover two zone. The Colts are not pattern matching like we saw with Sean Desai's defense, for better or for worse. They're not necessarily trying to match what they're doing to the opponent's routes. It's a little bit more of a spot drop zone, but within that you can have plenty of scouting tendencies. I mean, for instance, the Colts were especially insistent in this game on playing early downs with that loaded box that we talked about, because Arizona has a tendency when they get behind the chains to just start throwing the ball, but before then they'll try to run the ball to get back into balance, so to speak. Now, if memory serves, this is a third down, but I think they certainly like to roll, or the Colts certainly like to line up in press man looks more often than you'd realize. So they'll play whether it's two man back here or whether this is or like a cover two after all, because they play a lot of cover two. We don't quite know until the play gets snapped, but it looks like they rotated that safety down and they're going to play just something anti-run here on first down. But disguise exactly like that is outstandingly common in this, where they like to leverage. It doesn't matter that necessarily that they like to play single high, but they do like to, or they really, really like to use disguises, use rolls, and move those safeties a lot. I wouldn't say necessarily... It's more than the Desai system does, if you will. The Desai is much more normalized about just lining up in two high, and sure, you can pull one safety down sometimes, but most of the time they don't. In Flus's system, they will line up in they'll line up in one high and get back to two high. They'll line up in two high, get back to one high. They'll just shift everybody around all over the place just to keep you guessing. That's at least the aim here. But it's second down, so they're going to play more of a cover two. That's just a nice way to start thinking about it, right? It's second and long after a solid run stuff, so they're going to be looking to get into a cover two. And if not, they're at least going to bluff it. That's the key that you're going to see throughout this Flus defense. It's almost trying to do disguising through being so consistent. It's like, if you can predict what I want to do, then, or at least I can get you thinking about what I want to do, I can change what I am doing and try to catch you off guard. The other option would be something more like Matt Nagy's offense, right? Which was a little bit more like, if I have no idea what I'm doing, you definitely won't have any idea what I'm doing. And at its best, it would work, but obviously at worst, no chance. But Flus's offense or defense is much more, this is what we do, so then I can build off of it. Exactly like Colin said, tendency breakers. It's giving the opponent almost like a base plate so that when you iterate off of it, you can try to catch people off guard. But honestly, Case talks about, like, I hope that Roquan goes all pro. If not, I'll be sad. It's just going to come down to turnovers. One thing that I was looking at that I was like, holy moly, this is nuts to me. You got to remember that when it comes to somebody like Darius Leonard, right? You're looking at a player that in 16 games during the regular season picked up 3 interceptions, which, hey, that's more than Roquan Smith had. So hopefully Roquan can pick up 3 interceptions, because that would certainly help him out a lot. But oh my word, did y'all realize that Darius Leonard punched out 8 fumbles? Like, who is this guy? This was one of those things that I know I looked at. I was like, what on earth am I staring at? How did he punch out that many fumbles? If Roquan can create some more turnovers, he's going to get votes. It's sad that we live in that world, right? Where rallying to the ball, where working your way around linebackers, where being more than a small linebacker should be in the run game, where denying throws doesn't necessarily get you or like all pro votes, but it's where we're at. I mean, this is exactly the step that Roquan needs to take, where he's just got to force turnovers out. And It'll be interesting to see what happens at the very least. Because if his turnover numbers go up, his superlative awards will as well. It can be that simple. I continue to go back to in 2018, or no, not 2018, sorry, 2020, that Saints game that went into overtime where Roquan had the ball thrown right to him and dropped an interception that otherwise would have been a touchdown. I think it's as simple as if he catches that, he's not only a Pro Bowler, but he's probably an All-Pro. I mean, those moments, whether they're touchdowns, whether they're turnovers, especially big turnovers in primetime games, they influence votes probably more than they should. And at least in this 2021 iteration of defense, why would you bother throwing at Roquan Smith? You don't have to, almost ever. Just target Alec Ogletree if you've got to target a linebacker. Target Kendall Vildor if you want to target a corner. Target Duke Shelley, so on and so forth. You get the idea. But yeah, I mean, it seems about like that, Sean. I was like, oh my word. It is just nuts seeing the way that that he's able to get him out, or like get that ball out. Bailey, I've seen you ask that before. How does Eberflus's blitz package look like? He doesn't blitz often, and it's hard to tell because I do think that Eberflus is excited about the talent that he's got at edge rusher compared to what he had last year. I mean, the talent, or it's not to say that some guys like, I think it's I always have to go back and look, but it's Kwity Paye and Al Qadim Muhammad are bad, but Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, and Travis Gibson, Akusa, I'm going to go a whole stream getting their names right. They're a little bit better, at least at applying pressure in that case. But that's at least what I'm seeing. Censored, I completely get what you mean. The bright side is, for anybody out there that feels like going back to a spot drop cover 2 defense is awfully boring, given just the state of things, what I would encourage you to do as we start to, because we're going to pick up the pace a little bit as we watch this game, just watch the way these guys play. They're dutiful about it. The worst thing you can do is trot out a spot drop defense and play it badly, right? But what the Colts do at the very least is they're dutiful. They do a great job down with with their assignments. Is it just Kwity Paye? I never would have guessed. But anyways, so like they hustle, they're intentional about how they get into lanes and so on and so forth. They do a really good job as far as coaching out this defense. They admit, at least from what I have seen, get into passing lanes. They affect the run on the ground. They attack the ball really, really well, which sure, it's kind of boring. I totally get you. But there's a reason that, at least in my opinion, Matt Eberflus was able to turn a relatively meh defense into, or like in terms of personnel, into a pretty good defense, whether by ranking or by a lot of their performances. I mean, they win this game in Arizona here because of the defense, which I don't think that this is going to be the defensive scheme that creates a 2018 defense. At any point. I'll be the first to tell you this. This, in the world of defenses that we are talking about, it's not a... so let's go. This is your floor. This is your ceiling. If Fangio was about maximizing the ceiling, Eberflus is much more about raising the floor. It's not to suggest that that's a bad defense. It's more like this is a defense that will make a poor second safety play pretty well, right? Fangio's defense is much more schematically, I don't want to call it interesting, but when you've got the dudes behind it, Fangio's defense will just explode. I mean, we saw what happened in the 2018 defense with Akeem Hicks playing at an Aaron Donald-esque level, with the Mac, Mac obviously playing well. Roquan Smith was on a tear in the back half of the season. Eddie Jackson had one of the best seasons for a safety ever. Like, that kind of defense is really phenomenal. But like Jordan said, I mean, you can create the 2006 Bears here. Like, if you've got the guys for it, it can be a bend, don't break defense that will force the offense to make a mistake, and especially if they can add a little bit of talent here in free agency, just needs a little bit, right? I think that they could be certainly a better overall defense than they were last year, mostly because I think they'll put the the not as talented guys that they have on their defense in better positions to succeed. One really interesting people to talk about, or like person, would be Thomas Graham. So TG right here. I don't know whether they're going to play him here at Kenny Moore's nickel spot or on the outside where Rock Ya-Sin played alongside Eddie Jackson. He could play corner in this defense. I mean, it's a de-emphasized corner position. I certainly think he's a talented player, but I actually think this nickel spot is harder, especially in an NFL that's starting to get, whether it's Christian Kirk, whether it's Devontae Adams, whether it's Justin Jefferson, like really, really good players are ending up in the slot, and you can't just put Duke Shelley out there. You can't just play Kindle Vildor in the slot and expect good things to happen on a down-to-down basis. So I'm really curious to see what they do with Graham. You can't necessarily just roll into next season with Graham as a presumed starter and no competition. So know that if they do sign, say, 2 corners, or they sign one, they draft one, and so on and so forth, like I'm not going to be surprised. Thomas Graham should probably have to compete for his spot just to make sure that you don't end up with a Sam Mustipher situation. Apologies, Sam. But they, in my opinion, anyways, Graham is a very interesting player to watch because he and the defensive staff's evaluation of what like he is going to mean a lot. But so as you'll see, they really do move their safeties all over the place. Here they just started in a 2-high setup, and then they walked their safety down into more of a man-on-man look here against Zach Ertz, I think that is. Honestly, the Cardinals jerseys make it bizarrely hard to tell. But they're going to play man here on 3rd down. That's the basic one, right? But they started in what looked like a cover 2-high look, and then walked it into man anyways. When you know the tendency, it means that you can start and get into it, or you can look like you're just going to follow your normal tendency and back out of it. It doesn't really matter here because it's DeForest Buckner, jumps off sides and gives them the 1st down, but you'll see a lot of that. I mean, I guess you won't, because at least in this case, it's all going to be behind the broadcast, right? Like the broadcast footage is going to be from here to there. So of course you're not going to see any of it, but you'll see it on my channel on Wednesdays. Another thing that they do really like to do, that one joke that I know I was telling myself, the Colts will show you blitz all the time, but they won't actually blitz all that often. Here, they're going to have 2 guys take a step and drop off. The Cardinals get a nice quick completion off of it, but looks like that mug fronts that then they bump back into a coverage set. Here, they're going to try to blitz 5. I think it's actually 6-man blitz. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They really struggled to generate pressure. So especially near the end of the season, they just started throwing it at them. And I do think it worked. They got a lot better. But yeah, John, you're going to see a lot of that simulated pressure in this defense, which I'm a big fan of. I mean, like Mike Zimmerman, yes, John, I was thinking the same thing. Mike Zimmer has been so good at creating simulated pressure. And frankly, if there's one thing that I think that Eberflus could do to create to make Roquan a superstar, I want to see some defensive coordinator with the stones to do it. Take Roquan and just blitz him a lot. I get it. He's so good in coverage, but I'm sure all you Bears fans would agree with me. Roquan Smith is a phenomenal blitzer. Like, just in terms of his talent, it is the most underutilized piece of his skill set, and it's because defensive coordinators at any point they've ever worked with Roquan don't think that they can take him out of coverage and live with it, right? If you take Roquan out of coverage, it seems like they say to themselves, what are we going to do? Like, what if Roquan doesn't get home? But my goodness, Roquan, like Sean from The Go says, is a missile. Like, he's so good in terms of blitzing. And eventually, I would love to see the Bears, whether it's through free agency, God forbid it's through the draft. The Bears do not have enough draft capital, I think, to be drafting a linebacker in the top 4 rounds. But if they can get a player next to Roquan Smith that they can trust, I would love to see 58 on the tear a little bit more often because he's so good at it. I tend to think he'd be able to do quite a bit. But it's 1st down. And like we talked about, just to make sure we hammer home the point, right? It's first down. So they started in what looks like it could easily be a cover 2 alignment. And you better believe they're going to walk that safety down and end up back in a 1-high format because it's first down. First down means a running down. And a running down means let's get an extra guy into the box. It's so simplistic, right? It's basic at its core. But Eberflus prefers to have that extra guy in the box on first down, living or dying by it. And then on second and third down, he's going to take them out of the box. And if you want to run it, you can. It's not full Rams defense, right? It's not near as ridiculous as Raheem Morris and Brandon Staley's defense between 2020 and 2021 got, where they would take a guy out of the box and let you run all you wanted. On first down, they would prefer to stop you on the ground game. But on second down and third down, you're going to see these cover 2 alignments right here. I don't think I need to necessarily draw it out for you anymore. You guys are getting the picture. But they really do play cover 2 that often. I mean, it is just a lot of cover 2. And then here and there, they're going to shift into something that's a little bit more. It looks like right now they're actually playing, I can't tell if it's 4 or something a little closer to, it looks like 6 from what I can tell. So this safety, for those who don't know what cover 6 is, it's cover 4 on this side of the field, and it's cover 2 on this side of the field. Because in football terms, 2 plus 4 equals 6. This is what I was told. I think it's hilarious because it's 3. It's like a different, you get the idea. But anyways, cover 2 was the chief killer, but cover 2 is just a general passing limitation. It's the more guys that you get deep, the less that you can get hit on intermediate crossers. And playing stuff like this helps like Eberflus's defense make sure that it can isolate and bracket guys naturally. In this case, they happened to call 6 to the right side here, and they were able to get to completely blanket all these passing options, force a short throw underneath, and sure, they give up about 5 yards, but they force third down. Eberflus's defense is going to make you earn it on every single down. It's not a gasket, or it's not a defense that's going to blow a gasket often, unless somebody just gets beat, which you'll actually see happen a couple times this game. But most of the time, at least from a philosophical perspective, they're just going to make you walk that ball down the field, consistently coming for you, even as they just sit and wait for you. But here on third down, surprise, surprise, they're playing man. This is what they do. On first down, 1 high. Second down, 2 high. Third down, man. And they start to mix it up a little bit, as you'll see, because when you just exclusively play man and your second stringer, EJ Speed, gets matched up against Zach Ertz, it's not a matchup that anybody's super excited about. They lose it, and they give up some yardage. So, obviously, they're still feeling out the Cardinals. You're going to see this kind of stuff, right? But you also have, at least something that I like to see from the defensive line perspective, they go with a 5-down alignment with Okereke over the top, and they're actually going to rush all 5. So it's a quick blitz that still doesn't get home because, gosh, they cannot generate just about any pressure at all. But then Speed's going to get over, goes for a punch. I mean, clearly he's been talking to Darius Leonard, but but obviously it's still a first down. So then a quick throw on first. Interestingly enough, this is the Cardinals taking advantage of the way that the Colts tend to line up, because they still get into sort of their cover 2 alignment here on first down, kind of breaking the trend. But with 4 guys on 2 defenders, they get smoked on the outside. And by the way, in terms of the donation goal, nobody needs to. You don't have to if you don't want to, and that's totally fine. But I will tell you that, like, in terms of the next one that we'll do, at some point we'll go through Luke Getsy's offense, talk a lot about that piece of this Bears team. We can do that next week if y'all hit the dono goal, which is not to dangle a carrot, you get the idea. But if not, we'll get to it a little bit later, and I'll keep my head in some draft stuff and hopefully have some videos out here soon. I'm just trying to watch enough of the class that I don't sound like an idiot when I have when I put some videos together, but you know how it goes. Right censored? That's new, that's that new math. It's coach math, coach speak in its own way. So then here on second down, they think it's a rundown, and they bring somebody in. So they walk somebody down from the box. But I've seen a tiny bit of it, Jordan. It's nothing to get too wild about. Oh, the 30-second soundbite that I would give you about Luke Getsy's offense is, at the end of the day, it's hard to be worse than where Matt Nagy was. And I wish I was kidding when I say that. Sure, everybody wants to talk about how it's like, oh, it's Shanahan light and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, Luke Getsy's a 35-year-old. And the offense that we saw at MSU is... it's okay. It's nothing wild. It's a little bit more Moorhead than I think, say, somebody like Mike LaFleur was, or Matt LaFleur was. And so how much has he grown? How much has things changed? How much is he going to theme things around Fields? Truthfully, we don't really know. Getsy's a giant question mark, especially considering the youth or the youthful staff around him. But where their Bears are coming out of, it's hard to get worse. Like Akusai said here, the real problem with the Bears offense is they didn't run enough hitches and curls. So if they can at least get to a Shanahan-esque philosophy, and by philosophy, it's not about bunch sets, right? I would argue that Shanahan's philosophy and Dabble's philosophy in terms of what we want them to emulate are similar. The key is that each play formation sets up another play formation. I'd actually tell you with a straight face, I think Kingsbury really struggles with this. A lot of his formations can kind of give away the gun. I mean, here on second down, they line up with an extra tight end and in like the halfback, with a halfback right there and a running quarterback. And at the very least, the Colts think it's a run defense, or like that it's a run formation, and it is. The Kingsbury and Nagy can kind of share that, where the formation tips the hat a little bit more than maybe it should, whereas Dabble and Shanahan were a little bit better. If by a little bit, I mean a lot, right? Where their formations were more basic. They ran 6 plays out of the same formation. So just because they lined up in shotgun with a back out to the right with a tight end on the left-hand side and a 3 receiver set didn't necessarily mean that it was a run down, a pass down, or anything, because each play could easily set up another play. That's what I really want to see out of Getsy's offense. Truth be told, I mean, like RPOs, like the whole Moorhead RPO thing, every offense has RPOs nowadays. Whether it's a gap scheme or a zone scheme, I'm hoping that it stays zone, but that's mostly because that's what the Bears have been doing, and what I think the little of their offensive line that we're keeping is better at. But hey, I wouldn't mind a little bit more gap scheme either. I think gap scheme can be really helpful, especially if they beef up the offensive line the way that they seem to want to. I mean, hey, I don't know. Let's see if it's all smoke about the whole Ryan Poles offensive line care and Ian Cunningham, former offensive lineman, both of them offensive linemen. Let's make that offensive line. If that's real, then yeah, let's run some more gap scheme. Let's do some more exotic running. Let's do a lot of the stuff that Green Bay does. You guys have watched my Packers streams. Whenever we cover the Packers offense, I am just salivating. So I'm hoping that Getsy learned a lot about how much they could do to make Aaron Rodgers' life easier, for instance, because I think you could carry a lot of that over to Justin Fields. It's not the same player. He's not. Like, to say Robert wants Justin Fields in Aaron Rodgers' offense. No. But the way that they took pressure off of Rodgers. I mean, old Green Bay teams like the Mike McCarthy era, we truly used to watch Aaron have to go out there and win the game by himself, like along with the rest of the team, but their running games would flag. They didn't have near the sophistication of the 2020, 2021 Green Bay running game. And I think Getsy, at the very least, is at the epicenter of some of that. Again, we're not talking about all of it, right? But he's there for quite a bit. And I know that Getsy had all the experience, the reports are that he was one of the primary brains behind the Packers' third down sets, which the Packers are pretty good on third down this year. Overall, I think that there's a lot to worry about, if this makes sense, with Getsy. Young offensive coordinators obviously bring a lot of worry, but I would tell you with a straight face that I think that as far as an offensive coordinator that's a first-time offensive coordinator goes, Getsy's about what you're looking for in terms of qualifications. Former collegiate play calling experience, like multiple years inside of a healthy NFL system, actual play calling, like what is it, additions. Like he has made not only gotten to call plays on some of the Packers' third downs, but he brought concepts with him out of Mississippi State that the Packers liked between 2019 and 2021 and put into place. I think that there are a lot of times where people can take a coach, say Jay Rodgers, honestly not a bad example, the former Bears defensive line coach, and they can say, oh, well, he's really good at coaching defensive linemen. Let's make him an offensive or a defensive coordinator. And I don't necessarily think that being a good position coach means being a good blank. Like Joe Brady, as a decent example, he was a really good passing game coordinator and offensive coach, and quarterbacks coach with Joe Burrow. Does that necessarily make him a phenomenal offensive coordinator? Not necessarily. They're different. And so pieces of like where Getsy is, where he comes from, have me excited. Again, hard to be worse, if that makes sense, than where Matt Nagy was. But the hope would be, as I'm sure we can all agree, that the Bears are going to load up on receivers, that the Bears are going to load up on at least some offensive line talent. I know that two names you got to be looking for. This isn't a free agency preview, but you need to be looking at Ben Jones. He's a C out of Tennessee, so that's a center, right? And you need to be looking at Brian Allen. Also a C, at that one out of the Rams, right? I personally think the Bears are going to get a veteran center. Like, if you wanted to ask my personal opinion, they're going to sign a veteran center because I don't think they want to go into the draft looking for a center. I think that center can be a hard position to replace, and certainly, as Olin Kreutz will tell you in his defenses of Sam Mustipher, it's a hard position for a rookie to learn. And with Justin Fields having just survived the 2021 season that was nasty, I tend to think the Bears are going to see if they can't find youth at guard or youth at tackle on the offensive line and just get a veteran center that already knows the position that they can bring in, that can set protections. Somebody that can help Justin Fields learn to call protections and make decisions for themselves instead of somebody that would have to learn the position at that level. I mean, for instance, Jordan, I know you talked about it. The key, in my opinion, whether it's Ben Jones or Brian Allen, is that they don't have to pay that Ryan Jensen price, but they still get a nice upgrade at center, which is an important position. And so, like, I'm seeing somebody talk about moving Whitehair to center. I know that's Kreutz's rumor. I don't think it's happening. Whitehair is not. I mean, he really wasn't that phenomenal as center. It's not to say that he's bad, right? But he just wasn't that phenomenal as center. And you're right, Jordan. I mean, Ben Jones definitely isn't the 8-year center at this point, but I think that you can get a 3-year stopgap and address problems when you get there. Right now, the Bears have to be thinking about 2022. They can think about 2023 also, right? But this isn't a team planning for 2024 and 2025. Right now, you have to get Fields to take that next step. If he doesn't take that next step, you're dead in the water, right? All this defensive talk that we're doing right now doesn't matter. Like, you get what I mean. But you need to get that offense off the ground because right now, dead last in passing, not going to cut it. But I tend to think that yeah, exactly, Akusai. Whether it's Whitehair at center not playing near as well, because Daniels wasn't a very good center either, as they did at guard, I would tell you that you want the best 5 on the offensive line, and Cody Whitehair is probably not going to be your best 5 in center. And I would tell you that there are tons of prospects on the board, whether it's Tyler Smith, or that's somebody I love from the offensive line perspective. Obviously, everybody likes Zion Johnson. I don't know if I would want to take a guard with like the 39th pick, but if you could trade back and still get him, great. Like, I'm looking at a whole bunch of these offensive linemen from 50 down to 70, like pick 50, because I want the Bears to trade back. If I got to choose in the draft, they're sitting at 39. I think if they come down to say 55 and pick up something like 89 as they do, that is, this right here is a better package than this alone. Where, again, I want impact players just like anybody else does, you know? But at least the Bears have Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson, Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, and Roquan Smith on defense. Like, that's 5 legitimately good defenders, very good defenders. And you can work with that. You can work with David Montgomery in his final year, one way or another, right? You can work with Justin Fields. You can work with Tevin Jenkins. You can work with a lot of what they have. Darnell Mooney even counts as like somebody good. You know what I mean? But me personally, Jordan, I think a lot of the people projecting him at guard are crazy. Now, that's just me. I think that he's too good in terms of his movement. I would tell you that I think Tyler Smith is the true example. Let me put it this way. People will look all the time, Jordan. We're getting into a little bit of drafting stuff. They'll look at a Darian Kennard or they'll look at a Daniel Falele. I think his name's Daniel. You'll correct me if not. And they'll say, oh, he's just raw, right? And that's their way of saying, well, he doesn't look good, but his size is great and he's more athletic than anybody at that size should be. So I'll call him raw, take him for profile, and teach him how to play. I would tell you with a straight face, I think Tyler Smith is a much better example of a raw player because I think he just looks undercoached. Like, he's got all the ability in the world. He can generate tons of power with his hands. He moves so well for a guy that's 330 pounds and that powerful. But my word, his technique is bad. He gives up his chest like crazy. He doesn't seem like he has a plan in terms of his pass rush moves. And then there he is all of a sudden, and he's just knocking dudes around anyways at like 19 and 20 years old. I look at somebody like that at this point, and I think to myself that you can coach him up. That's, to me, more true raw, right? And I would try him at tackle before I get there. And I don't either, Jordan. Like, exactly. You're barking up my tree. But that's where, at the very least, I would personally say that you take Smith or somebody like that and you play him at tackle and make him prove he can't play tackle before you move him to guard. I'd pick somebody like Jamari Sawyer in the 4th, though, stick him at guard and go to town. You better believe it. Anyways, back to the defensive talk. Khalid, you're right. Every time you look at the Colts defense, I do agree that they look prepared. I mean, they come very clearly with, they come prepped for what the opponent does. What Eberflus's real call to action is that they scout the snot out of their team, or the other guys. You better believe it, Jason. Like, whether it's live streams or videos that are like the normal 12 to 20 minute video edits that I know I used to put together, I want to get back to doing as much of it as I can as we try to push for a full-time career, but we get there when we get there. I love these kinds of double mug looks. Know that Eberflus is definitely not shy about them, especially on 3rd down, stuff like that, right? Where right now they're threatening a man look, and it's hard to imagine they do anything else, but they're going to send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the blitz. They've got one guy sitting over the middle. He being Eberflus, very diligent about protecting the middle of the field and pushing throws out to the boundary. And here, it works. I mean, there's a reason these throws are so hard, right? They just become lower percentage throws by nature of being as difficult as they are. And I would tell you that the defensive back, Kenny Moore, does a really, really good job here. It's not a bad route by Kirk. It's not a bad throw. It's actually a very good throw. Like, you got to give credit to Kyler on this one. Like, that is nice. But yeah, it's awesome. Oh, I completely hear you, Jordan. That's where, in my opinion, the nice piece about Flus's defense is that it's not just one thing. It is a lot of cover 2, sure. I mean, definitely, right? But on a 3rd down set, they're completely changing the rules, right? Like, this is not cover 2. This is cover 1 with like one guy dropping right here on a blitz. It's not even cover 1. It's just single high with a blitz on the back. Like, it's a drop. You're right, Akusai. But at least the defense is making the offense do something very, very difficult. They're not able to. And it forces a field goal that I don't want to steal the game's thunder here, but they're going to miss. So the Colts are able to ultimately take points off the board, be partially due to aggression. But let's see. Right. No, I totally hear you, Jordan. I think that Eberflus tries to walk the line of doing a little bit of both, right? Where Eberflus wants to use that safety rotation and also do a whole bunch of front overload. Turu, the new DC frankly, the whole defensive staff came over from the Colts. Like, the best part about the Colts or the Bears situation is that their entire defensive staff has years of working together. The offensive staff's super young and new, and they're going to have to figure it out. Like, I mean, you're going to bring Getsy over from Green Bay, and you're going to bring the wide receivers coach over from I can't remember where. Offensive line coach comes over from Atlanta, and like they've got all sorts of things that they did on offense, and young guys that they basically promoted, a whole bunch of people basically in the first time that they're in that role. So a lot of youth, maybe too much youth if you're worried about that. On the other side, the defensive staff is like a bunch of guys that have been working together, will remain working together. And if I could be really blunt with you guys, I'm shocked that the Colts just let them all out the door. I mean, I feel like a complete overhaul on the Colts defensive personnel is going to be really hard for them, especially in a year where right now they're super doubty about Carson Wentz. So who's to say what the Colts are even going to look like? They could get worse in a hurry. By the way, I forgot about this run. First play, our first offensive play. Check out, I think it's Jonathan Taylor still, but check out this run. These are fun, right? Cardinal misses a tackle. He gone. Just turns it up and goes. Thank you so much, Cody. Super helpful. If it doesn't log in, know that I've got it in my mind that we're at $10. But so you bet. Thank you so much. You really have no idea how helpful that is. Thank you. But let's see. Yes, exactly, Marty. I personally think the pass rush got a lot better. The number one position that the Bears need to figure out at this point, right, is how do you not love JT? In case the number one position the Bears need to figure out is 3-tech defensive tackle, which is a really, really simple idea, right? And Cody, hey, the bright side is if you don't catch the show, you can catch it on the back. Like, yes, Akusai wide receiver, but we're talking defensively. Like, the number one position that I think, there are a couple. Sorry, I'm putting my foot in my mouth. But the main thing that I'm sitting here thinking about is that the Bears have 3 positions that they need to solve. Like, yes, they need to figure out second corner. Yes, they need to figure out Sam linebacker nickel. Yes, they need to figure out, another safety. But the real 3 that I'm looking at are, in order, probably. They need a second linebacker. This can't just be Ogletree, right? We're speaking strictly defensively, speculation. They need a 3-tech defensive tackle, and this guy needs to be good. There's a reason the Colts traded for DeForest Buckner. Like, that is a very, very important position inside of this defense, and they need a second player at safety. Jordan, I know you asked earlier about what I thought about JT Woods. If I got to pick a player, right, I want the Bears to have 2 coverage safeties. Sure, if kind of like Eddie Jackson, they can come down and hit a little bit, that's okay, but I don't want my safeties to necessarily be part of the tackling force. I want them to be as much focused on coverage as they can be, because I think that safeties at this point can be, or like will end up in do or die coverage situations all the time. I don't think you need like the old school thumper plus coverage guy pair. You don't need a free and a strong, so to speak. The Bears will certainly be rotating both all the time. And Woods is somebody that, just in case you draft heads are out there, JT Woods is somebody that not only played in a very similar defense to what they're doing here. Frankly, you could say it's a schematically more advanced defense, or Dave Aranda's Baylor defenses, like inside of this that work back. But so he should be a pretty clean transition into this cover 2 kind of scheme. But Woods is also pretty capable when it comes to coming downhill to hit somebody, not like to level him, right? But on something like a crosser or rolling by and cutting somebody out from under them, you like good enough. And I'm with you, Jordan. The main reason that I like JT Woods is because you can get him late. I don't think you can take this safety before round 4. If you want to know my honest opinion, Brandon, if you know him at all, he's a huge defensive back guy. He cannot stand that I have this take. But my thought is that safety is a position that I think so many teams get wrong consistently, right? That I think that there's value to be found later in the draft. I don't think it's an accident that you've got Eddie Jackson in the 4th round, right? You got Adrian Amos in, thank you so much, AGM. That's unbelievably kind of you. Like Adrian Amos in the 5th round. Safeties are not dissimilar to running backs for a very different reason. Safeties are harder to find, sure, but the first round safeties, if you think about them, right, that have come out have recently been guys like Jabril Peppers. They've been guys like Jamal Adams. They've been super talented, ultra athletic guys that, sure, you'll get the occasional Minkah Fitzpatrick, right? They're out there just like but it's kind of like tight end in that I think scouts have trouble identifying what makes a safety really good. And the main reason I get excited about somebody like JT Woods is that there are a lot of things that'll push him down the board, but he fits the scheme. Let me put it this way. At the end of the day, whether an edge rusher fits the scheme or not isn't that important, right? Whether you're playing something more like a cover 2 zone defense or a cover 1, cover 3 defense, much more like, much more like what they do in Tampa Bay, your edge rusher is your edge rusher. And that's part of the reason so many of them go so high. But safety, in my opinion, you're right, Case. I'm by no means trying to dunk on these dudes. It's more to say that you mentioned Budda Baker, phenomenal player, 2nd round pick, not necessarily some massive 1st rounder. Tyrann Mathieu, a 3rd rounder. It's not to say that I hate drafting them that high. It's more to say that with where the Bears are at, I think their money and their picks need to go to wide receiver. They need to go to offensive line. They need to go back to offensive line. They need to go back to wide receiver. Like, you look all across the board on what the Bears' needs are, and I think they get to safety later, so you got to go find one of those value guys. I think it's easier to find value at safety than it is at, say, offensive tackle. So you start with what you need to start at, and you work your way down. That's really all I'm saying here. It's by no means to dunk on and say JT Woods is a better player than Dex Hill. You get the idea. I'm more thinking that if you can find that coverage fit, that scheme fit, see if you can't find your Darnell Mooney at safety. That's the way I would put it, right? Look for the Darnell Mooney at safety because I think you could find him there. But so another position that I keep looking at, we talked about Buckner earlier, right? This is one that, like, if they get to 39 and Devontae Wyatt's there, like, there are some really talented defensive linemen that if they slotted them in at 3 tech would do really, really well. Another guy, I'm not kidding, by the way, this is going to sound like a very Bears homer thing, but if there is a name, I'm just going to write it down, that might actually be in play if the Bears go the free agent route at 3 tech, because right now you're looking at Angelo Blackson here. Right now you're looking at Angelo Blackson and like Kyrus Tonga, Mario Edwards. Like, they've got some guys here thank you so much, Jason. Unbelievable. You're amazing. Yes, I would absolutely do any of that stuff. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a record. That's the biggest donation we've ever had. So thank you, Jason. And that's immediately going to qualify the Getsy streams. Thank you. But so Nichols is in free agency. We've got when you look at all of this, it's not a super strong defensive line, which brings up that there's a guy by the name of Hicks that's going to be looking for a contract. And would you believe it? He fits that 3 tech position surprisingly well. Then you'd be able to slide Angelo Blackson over into more of a run stuff role, which would fit him really, really well. And I just can't help but wonder that if the Bears were going to look for a stopgap at that 3 tech position, maybe they mend the fence with the guy who was dying to play in Chicago. Like, I'm not just trying to necessarily, bring the mood up. You get the idea. I just would ask, exactly, Derek, it's going to be a medical call, right? It's going to be a matter of whether he's healthy enough to play. But because of the medicals and because of his age, he's going to be affordable, which is not to say, right, that like somehow because he's affordable, he's bad. It's more that the Bears, you only get a couple of options, right? You either are going to take a player with a red flag and hope that red flag doesn't come to roost, or you are going to sign a player for much bigger money and not deal with the red flags. And so Hicks might just be that even marriage where you say, hey, as long as we can, or like get 8 to 12 games out of Akeem Hicks and he looks decent, like maybe they go the free agent route there and the free agent route there so that they can go draft there and then very heavy, whether it's CB, whether it's wide receiver, offensive line, like they've got enough positions that they need to fill with draft capital that my guess is they're going to try to take out some of these before the draft. Jordan, I know what you're probably thinking. I'll reference Jordan because I don't know how many other draft heads we've really got in the chat, but one thing I keep thinking about is right now, I would tell you that Bears fans running mock drafts need to be careful because free agency comes before the draft, and the Bears are going to try to fix some of this stuff before then. They're not going to fix all of it. Like, I'm almost sure they're going to go into the draft with needs, right? But that's part of why out of all the drafts that I've done, mock drafts, I've only published a couple, but we'll put more on this channel later. Out of all the mock drafts I've done, I've yet to draft a center. And it's because I'm certain they're going to sign a center in free agency. And I think they're going to sign a 3-tech. I think they're going to at least look for a safety. Probably going to sign, honestly, they could sign Muhammad here, like, because he's a free agent, and just bring him over as a decent little edge defender that can be part of an edge rotation, right? They're going to talk to some people at the very least. Won't surprise me if they look for their linebacker. Won't surprise me if they get some depth at corner while they're here. Won't surprise me if they bring in a safety and then potentially draft another one in, or like anyways, so that they can just have more bodies at the position. But there are some of these that obviously they can't just solve in free agency, wide receiver and offensive line being the main that I would look at. Remember, there's one wide receiver on the Bears roster right now. It's Darnell Mooney. So you could sign Michael Gallup and also Cedric Wilson, and you've still got to draft 3 receivers. One way, shape, or form. Like, even if it's just UDFAs. But yeah, I'm going to be really interested to see what they do. I don't think, MJ, that Bengals are going to poach all the offensive line talent. I just don't know if anybody can. I mean, maybe, right? In Madden, you sure could try, but the world isn't Madden. I don't think they're necessarily going to, or that they're going to get everybody by any stretch of the imagination. Like, maybe they do, but I really doubt it. Talking about Christian Watson, yes, Sean. The only question is going to be another thing to watch for. Just any draft heads out there. We'll talk about this more later. I'm still getting through the class, and then I can start pumping out some videos. Christian Watson is not going to be a 4th rounder. That's one of those players right now. Tyler Smith and Christian Watson, I would tell you, are just like way too low. Christian Watson especially. Before the Senior Bowl, the guy was a 5th round pick, for crying out loud. Now he's closer to like a 4th or 3rd, but I would not be surprised if he's going to be a late 2nd rounder. I mean, we'll see. This wide receiver class, especially up near the top, like couple or 2 rounds, is really, really good. The Bears should be taking a receiver, whether it's David Bell, whether it's George Pickens, whether it's Chris Olave getting pushed on the board because everybody wants an X receiver or something like that. What the Bears really need, by the way, is an X receiver. What you need to watch for, whether it's in free agency or the draft, is 13 here, Christian Kirk. That is Darnell Mooney. The Bears don't need to sign Christian Kirk. They already have Christian Kirk, which is not to say that you need necessarily an X, a Z, and an H receiver, as it's called. H is also slot. That's what you know it as. I don't know why anybody calls it H. I just know they do. But so the X receiver is your A-Rob, right? It's your big blocking guy. It's the guy who sits at the line of scrimmage. That's the key thing, right? Is he is on the ball. And because he's on the ball, he's easier to press. That's why people traditionally lead him, or like, have bigger X receivers, whether it is a run that comes to this side that it forces him to block. Like, you get the idea. That X receiver tends to be bigger, in my opinion. And the key is that the Z receiver, the other guy, in this case it's Kirk in motion, they move around a lot. And so that's much more Mooney's role, in my opinion. So, like, I think personally that you want to at least start or by getting somebody who is going to, or what's the word, like you need to at least start, whether it's free agency where you get somebody like Mike Williams, Michael Gallup. Those are two names that come to the very top of my mind. Honestly, you could go cheap and try somebody like Juju Smith-Schuster, which is as cheap as you're going to find for like an X receiver that might actually help the team. But what you would be doing in this case would be trying to find an X receiver that can then let Mooney do his Mooney thing in the Z. And then you need an H receiver. Another guy that I've got would be Calvin Austin, Matthew Brown. What you said about Alan Lazard, that's a really good idea for like for a different, like, or what's the word, like for another option at a cheap X receiver. Like that's a very good idea, as a matter of fact. But it'll be really interesting to see what the Bears do, because they need to complete their receiver room. They've got one receiver right now. I just don't want to see them draft a bunch of the same guys or sign a bunch of the same guys. Another guy you should be watching for, his name is Calvin Austin out of Memphis, because the Bears have never drafted a Memphis receiver that wasn't good, obviously. But Calvin Austin's awesome. I mean, all you're going to have to do is turn on a little bit of tape, and you're going to see a small slot machine. I mean, smaller guy, yes, but awesome. Like, really phenomenal weapon at what he does. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I know, yeah, right, Adam Amendola. I at least had to mention it. You know I had to. But Jordan, I agree with you on Drake London. To me, I think Drake London is just going to go way higher than he's currently set to be. Like, I love Drake London. It's hard not to, honestly. But yeah, Calvin Austin's phenomenal. If somehow Jamison Williams fell to 39, I'd be over the moon. It's just not going to happen. Like, and so there's a ton of these players that we could talk about where it's like, I love that player. Bears aren't going to get him, but I love him. And what I'm mostly looking at after all these prospects that we're talking about is there is going to be a dude at 39. And when Zion Johnson, when Bell, when George Pickens gets to 39, somebody's going to want to come up for somewhere in the 50s to 60s with a third-round pick. And what I keep thinking about is that in this draft, where there is a lot of talent from pick 130 and up, I'll write that down just to make sure. I personally think there's a ton of talent from pick number 130 through like 40. It's not to say a lot of these guys are the same. It's more to say that there is a lot of talent in these rounds, whether it's defensive tackle John Ridgeway, whether it's Calvin Austin III, whether it's Jamari Sawyer out of Georgia, the guard, whether it's Tyler Smith, a tackle I love out of Tulsa. I'm probably going to make a video on him because I just love watching the kid. Like, there is tons of talent out there, and I think a pick at 50, a pick at 71, and a pick in the late 80s, early 90s helps this team more than 39 and 71. That's me personally. I'm curious to hear what you guys think, because as much as it's going to hurt, right? It can't be. It's just hard to put myself in the position of thinking that one receiver or one guard or one cornerback or one safety is going to be near as helpful as a slight step down at one of those positions, whether it's Christian Watson, whether it's Jordan Tolbert, right? Whether it's oh my gosh, I'm forgetting guards, but like, especially in the later rounds, whether it's Max Mitchell at offensive tackle, whether it's that Jamari Sawyer, whether, like, if you work your way down, I mean, Jordan, to your point, if you get Pickens at 50, you stole a first rounder. Like, and then if you pick up Austin at 71, you've got a really, really good triple or like set of three receivers to pair with somebody like Michael Gallup or whoever else the Bears are inevitably going to sign in free agency, because they just can't go into the 2022 season with two guys under contract. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at this stage, because exactly like you're saying, or like y'all are talking about, the draft is just going to be a very strategic moment overall, because let's see. Oh man. For sure, Igobi, like if you got to pick between like having a good receiver versus just some X, like, yes, but I do think that the Bears are going to need an X, especially if they're going to run a Shanny-esque defense. But anyways, this is an Eberflus stream, and we got really off track. But hey, that's what the people wanted, and so here we are. By the way, one advantage to the new house: my wife is rooms away, so we never have to end up in SMR mode or ASMR mode, which I was practicing. I was going through some ASMR stuff and seeing what that looked like, but I think I'd have to turn up my mic settings, and really I don't want to go there. But I did think it was, at some point, maybe as a goof, we could try an actual like full on, I don't know, we'll just play around with whatever, but it's a benefit of Kusai because I don't ever have to be quiet, thankfully. But yeah, exactly. Let's see. Oh, Buckner's incredible. Buckner's just amazing. Let's see. Yeah, I completely agree, Jordan. It's going to be exciting for the Bears because I really think this draft sets up well. They just need more picks. And so it's just a matter of getting there. But second down, incompletion. Thanks so much, Case. Of course, they're going to line up in another too high cover 2 like. Now, what are they going to play out of it? If you guessed they're going to play cover 2, you would be correct. I mean, the Eberflus defense, I think, is fun in its simplicity. And sure, could you get a corner that's going to make a better break on this ball? I sure hope so. I tend to hope that Jalen Johnson would, just because, I mean, this exact kind of route is quite literally what the corner's right in place for. This is not a super talented Colts defense that we're watching. Like, they got some dudes like Buckner, but Leonard's not in this game. A lot of what you're watching is second stringers in this case. And so the scheme isn't necessarily, what's the word? Yeah, I mean, it's not new, if that makes sense, but it is, it's something that not only people know how to play, but they know how to execute. I think that's cool. I can't tell if the Discord call came through there, but I'll just go ahead and mute that just in case. But so anyways, let's see here. Yeah, Buckner, Leonard, Moore the third are guys that I like. I think Willis is fine. I'm not 100% sure when he popped off, but yeah. Case, it looks like it did then. But so anyways, let's see here. No worm food. It wasn't. It was me. That's 100% my fault. You're like, oh no. But so first down. In this case, they're actually just going to play their usual cover 2, and they end up getting beat a little bit. But no, Derek, it's not a technical difficulty. This is going to be a clean stream, dang it. Clean stream. But so one thing I also want to do, just while we're on the subject of like what this channel is going to look like, there are a couple guys that I really want to take a look at, which is so silly. Like, I know we're Bears fans, right? But after all this talk about Cole Kmet, like, it's going to sound simplistic because I don't necessarily want to make a Cole Kmet video. I think Cole Kmet is going to keep showing us who he is over time. But I do want to look at Mark Andrews. I think an in-depth study on the player that Mark Andrews is would be awesome because his tape's super fun. Every time I watch the Ravens, he's just popping off of it in a way that was just unbelievable in this last year. So there are a couple players. If you guys have anybody else that you want to take an extra look at, let me know, and so that I can go through it, because certainly doing this would be more of like a June, July, August thing, before the Bears season starts, but like well after the draft. But so we'll see what we can do. Obviously, we're going to do some field stuff. Obviously, we're going to do a lot of things. At some point, exactly, Derek, right? You run the logo, and then you go, we don't really know yet. And then you close up. Bang, there it is. Cody, good stuff. Have a great one. This, by the way, Kyler's an alien. I think he's so intriguing. Like, so intriguing. Because Kyler, at this point, from guys that I talked to in the, what's the word? Like, that talked to in the Arizona area, they've gone to practices and they've told me that one little interesting tidbit is that Kyler just doesn't really practice. So he's that just like alien mutant that's so unbelievably good. But I am really interested to see how his career is going to keep going, because he does tend to kind of make the same mistakes overall. And you start to wonder whether part of that's due to not really practicing. 30, by the way, somebody asked is, let me take a look at the roster. Get that answer for you right here. That is George Odom, the second string safety. I told you, it's a lot of second stringers here. Yeah, they're going after Kyler at that point. Wormfood, it wouldn't surprise me if he's not a huge fan of of necessarily watching tape. I don't know. I don't want to be the whole like he's a diva kind of guy because I don't freaking know. Like we're completely disconnected from most of these players, but I do get the impression that there's something going on because I would have expected somebody of his just outstanding talent level to have taken that next step by now, but we haven't really seen it. I mean, like, to me, there's a huge difference between somebody like Kyler that can make all the throws and honestly might be one of the best running quarterbacks in football that hasn't taken the step that somebody like Lamar Jackson has. I mean, say what you will about Lamar, because I know obviously there's this rap on him that he's like some kind of bad passer. Lamar wants it, and he does everything he can, in my opinion, to maximize his abilities and to curtail his weaknesses to make himself the best quarterback that he can be. And I just respect the snot out of it. I mean, you can tell which guys it's going to sound like such coach speak, right? You could tell that there are some guys out there that want it and some guys out there that are so talented that they're kind of happy where they are. Or they've got something else on their mind. I mean, there were years there, right, where Derek Carr looked like he was playing for his own safety, that he was starting there and he would figure out the rest later. And yeah, I'm with you, Jordan. I mean, they like to play off ball and so on and so forth all the time. But yeah, right. Adamola, completely get what you mean. Like that's to me the biggest piece in this is that you got to take anything that I or anybody else says with a grain of salt, because like I'm hearing what somebody else saw at practice, sure, but at the end of the day, I don't know Kyler at all, and it's worth remembering that. So, who knows? Super talented kid, though. It's like watching Tariq Cohen at quarterback, which is a silly way to phrase it, but I swear that's what I see. Let's see here. Did they go too high here? They might have. Looks like Colts missed another field goal. They're going to roll him into the box. Surprise, surprise. Start too high, roll down, standard disguise, and then they've got somebody ready for the run game. He's able, as you saw, to turn the running back a little bit more into the teeth of the defensive formation and then run stuff. It's not that complicated a defense. I mean, the stuff that we used to talk about like, oh, wow, Eddie Jackson's covering, we used to talk about zone pattern match stuff where it'd be like this safety would cover this tight end's in routes and stuff like that. And that's not really the core of most of these cover two schemes. It's a little different. I mean, sure, there are pass offs. There are still zone principles that are not dissimilar, but it's mostly for stuff like this, where these two are bracketing the tight end coming off the ball. And Jordan, they do at plenty of cases because they roll them enough that you get a lot of at snap motion. But the big key is so that on cover two setups like this, you've got two guys dropping, blanketing him. You've got a corner that's sucking up the corner route with the safety biting down. You got another corner that's playing this, and Kyler just doesn't really have anywhere to go with the ball, so he's going to check it down. And the Cardinals get 6 to 7 yards off of this, but they just move around. I mean, like the way that these guys play together is really fun to watch, as Moore and Okereke here are they're going to completely swallow Ertz's route at the very least. Moore does a great job coming up to rally tackle. I really appreciate the way that they go about their defense, at least philosophically, where here they show a blitz from that interior linebacker. He doesn't come, but he at least shows that he could, which I'm appreciative of. Look, there's a lot of this stuff that I could tell you, oh, wow, I like it. And it's because it's not stale, you know. But What defense is really going to be stale in the modern era? I would tell you with a straight face that the overall takeaway from Eberflus's defense is that they're really well coached. The hustle thing is real. He does a great job of bringing up the worst players in the scheme, where there aren't really that many truly terrible players, especially once we flip the Rams tape on. You're going to see some guys just get smoked. I mean, we'll get there relatively soon. I don't want to keep us on too late here, but the Rams tape is much more ugly, and it shows just what 15 weeks of coaching did to this same squad. And here, they're doing a pretty solid job of holding the Cardinals down. I mean, the Cardinals are a good team. What was it? They were number 1 in the NFL there for a little bit. So, yes, they lost steam down the stretch. Of course, everybody knows that. But there's a lot to get, I wouldn't say conventionally excited about. It's not like our defense is gonna be amazing. It's more like you should expect the defense to look relatively prepared. You should expect the bottom to come up of the defense. So I would tell you should expect the Bears to invest much more heavily on offense and lean on their defensive staff to be the improvement on the defensive perspective so that they can try to end the season with a top 10 defense. And hey, if all the stars align, maybe a top 10 offense too. Like if Justin Fields throws for 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns and 10 interceptions and he's got 4 rushing scores to add to it, sure, maybe. Anything's possible, right? But I wouldn't go there yet. I don't know. I'm in a very believe it when I see it aspect of Fields. I love Fields, but I don't want to promise anything because we're talking about Chicago. We're talking about like the land of cursed quarterbacks, if that makes sense. And so I know, right? Fields, that's where I can't promise you anything. I think it's possible. I mean, I think Fields really does have all the talent, and I saw a lot of the things that I wanted to see from him, but there is enough curse in Chicago and enough bad tape that I'm willing to wait and make him actually do it until we get there. But yeah, I'm with you too, Bacon. A defense that can play average with below average investment. I'm expecting a defense with average investment to play or to yield above average, and that's what I expect them to look for at the very least. But one thing that I did really, really appreciate about this is right here. Oh, Akusai, and I've seen a lot of it. You're going to see it. It's great. But so this is 4th down. One thing I really appreciate about Eberflus is that on 1st and 2nd down, so 1st down, we don't need to necessarily chart it out, but 1st down and 2nd down, the attitude is much more wait for a mistake. Wait for a mistake. On 3rd down and 4th down, right? Eberflus's attitude shifts to go get him. I really appreciate this. Look, it's simple, right? It's very keep it simple stupid of an attitude. But on 3rd and 4th down, like this is a 4th down, they're going to blitz. Because most teams come to the game with 3rd and 4th down play calls specifically, right? They come with gotta have it play calls. In the Bears setup, this would be Allen Robinson. No, this would be Allen Robinson. This would be Darnell Mooney. This would be Marquise Goodwin. And you'd have Goodwin run a fade. You'd have Mooney run that thing right there. You'd clear everybody out. And then Allen Robinson would do his wiggly option route and kick out that way. Quick throw to Allen Robinson, easy conversion. I mean, we've seen it a lot, right? So the key that I'm saying here is that every team has these 3rd and 4th down play calls that they're ready to use. They're written down on the sheet, not dissimilar to Nagy's. And with Eberflus's go-get-'em mentality, you end up trying to disrupt this. And so that's exactly what they're going to do here, right? Where they bring a blitz. Bobby Okereke times it, I mean, perfectly, right? But so they bracket the short stuff. They manage to force a tough throw to Zach Ertz that he catches. Come on. But at least you're making it hard. They actually overturned this. But I do want to give you this moment of just like, I know I was watching this, and the Colts get everything they want. I mean, Kyler's throwing it running backwards. Ertz is fully stretched out for it and just barely pulls it in, but gracious alive. But yeah, I mean, okay, come on, Akusai. There were out routes. There were option routes, especially on third down. But gosh, towards that middle, yeah, it was just a bunch of max hitches. I love everybody. Where are the curls? Man, I need to put like a curl on a mug or something like that. But yeah, this is a nasty catch that did get overturned, but even just the effort alone was absolutely nutty. Referee rules it a catch, and then they overturned it after the fact. But so we'll hustle up a little bit. Overall, again, at the risk of repeating myself, there is a lot of things to get excited about within this defense. Even so, we're not looking at a defense that's going to just blow everybody's mind, right? You're looking at a defense that's going to feature the players that is within the defense. You're going to get guys like Buckner that are going to be these just crazy animals, exactly like he is in this case. I appreciate the fact that they kind of save their blitzes. I do think that blitzing on first and second down doesn't really... Well, that's the thing, Jordan, right? You talk about how you love that he plays man. What I love, honestly, is that he's got different rules on first and second down, right? But I was thinking about that case, honestly. Okay, straw poll, right? If I put together a hoodie that was just max hitches, like a faux Coleman hoodie, does anybody want it? Because I think that'd be hilarious. I mean, like, that's exactly something I was thinking about. But, so... Jay, I have seen a little bit of the tape. It's not good. But at the same time, I get the impression, it's just an impression, right, that Eberflus had head coaching on his mind in that Jags loss. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the offense has to score more than 10 points. I mean, there are a couple of Carson Wentz plays in this game, just this game, where I'm like, holy moly, can this guy play at all? And so... I love this kind of stuff, by the way. Jordan, you talked earlier about how a little bit of a subject change here, but one thing that I appreciate about this defense, and yes, Galaxy, this is the one game Leonard didn't play because of course it was, right? But I love the fact that they change, how they will show themselves. Like in Sean Desai's defenses, especially by the end of it, you tended to get a sense for what looks would involve what defenses, obviously. But with at least this defense, on first and second down, they'll play zone and basically make you just get all the way down the field, right? Like think about it this way, from 20 to 20, right? You're looking at, on average, about 4 first downs, more than likely somewhere, or like 3 to 5 at the very least, up to 6, right? So let me write that better. 20 to 20. So what you're really doing from, on first down and second down is waiting for the offense to put themselves in third down, right? Any offense will. And so on third down, you could make the argument that's when the Eberflus defense comes out, so to speak. It's very Mike Zimmer in the way that they go about it, because on third down, their rules change in a way that they like, right? Where they're going to put you in, they're not going to put you in 2nd and 9, right? They're not going to hit you with some all-out blitz here most of the time on second down to put you in 3rd and 15, right? Maybe. Like, it's not, I never say never, right? But most of the time on first down, they're going to let you run the ball. They're going to hope that you get 2 yards or less. Now it's the 2nd and 8 and you're behind the chains, right? And then on second down, they're just going to try to keep you from getting to the sticks. So if you end up on 3rd and 1, good for you. If you end up on 3rd and 8, great. And if they get a sack and you're at 3rd and 15, even better, right? But the idea, at least within the core of the Eberflus defense, is to get into third downs and then do weird stuff like this. Like, look at this. I mean, you talk about double mug pressure. Like, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the offense or on the defensive line. Like, they are ready to roll, and they're just going to bring everybody safety. Like, that's not a joke, right? Where here on third down, what is it? We're going to go for you, right? And maybe it freaks the center out. Who's to say? I don't know. Right? And thank you. It looks like it is just 7 guys. I don't know why I counted 8, but either way, like they're going to bring the pressure. They do in this case. They have the safety ready to just try to pick up anything and see if they can't bring somebody home. And it creates a mistake on the other side, and that works out for him. This is a great example of it working especially well, right? Like, it's not this good every game. They had their moments where they got toasted, that's for sure. But I appreciate this idea of having one set of core rules on first and second down and another set of core rules on third down. Now, the weakness, if you can figure it out, is that the Rams teed off on them, but they teed off on first and second down, right? It's interesting to watch how you attack this Eberflus defense, because the way that I would tell anybody to attack it is to take advantage of what you know, right? Make sure that you build a cover 2 beater into functionally every single play that you run. Like, you need something, because it'll be there eventually. They're just going to rotate into it, right? You want to throw that sort of, or like, you want to make sure, I think, that you attack Eberflus's defense while it's kind of giving you what you know it will. That's not to say that they're going to call cover 2 on every play, right? It's not an all-you-can-eat sushi restaurant. I've made that comparison before, but it's not every way to dress up a California roll. They do a lot more than just cover 2. They throw in cover 6. They throw in cover 3. They throw in cover 1 man. It's not even just exclusively zone on first and second down, and it's not just no blitz. It's just very rare. The Bears are going to bend. They are not going to break. They are very insistent on this. They are going to bend. They are not going to break until third down, where they're going to try to put the clamps on you and get off the field, which I can appreciate, because as long as everybody's hustling, honestly, I think with a straight face that the Bears have more talent on this defense, like their defense, than the Colts did, which, as long as Robert Quinn doesn't follow his usual trend of having an up year and a down year and an up year and a down year and an up year and a down year, I think he will. They could be really dangerous. But, I mean, that's kind of been Quinn's whole career. Good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And so he just set the sack record after having 2 sacks. Everybody go back and look at all the comments that I got dunked on after that Rule of 3 video. I am laughing about this, by the way. I can't believe that thing got redeemed. But I'm shocked at this point that that Rule of 3 video, I was like, as soon as he got turf toe and drop foot and all that stuff, like, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I do think that the talent's better here. Censored, I completely get you on being down about the hire because it's not offensive. My trouble is that I think that it's easy to forget that we don't know anything about these coaches. Like, we could take a look at the scheme, right? And we could take a look at the core of the team. We could take a look at the culture, right? And say, okay, what are we really looking at here? Oh, by the way, I got to show you guys this play because you're going to all recognize it. Let me see here. Yes, you got to ignore that case. But so my 2 favorites coming into this season were Brian Dabble and yeah, right, exactly, Adavola. But so my 2 favorites are Brian Dabble and Byron Leftwich. Byron Leftwich didn't get a job, and Brian Dabble looks great in New York. I think that New York staff looks killer. I think the Giants in general are really well set up. I'm not going to pull my punches. I think that's a scheme that we know Fields would have been really good in. Like, even just the ideas behind what made Josh Allen so good, I think it would have made Justin Fields shine. But that's not the hire the Bears ended up with. Instead, they ended up with my 3rd favorite hire on a list of 8 that did not include Kevin O'Connell. It did not really include Nathaniel Hackett. I never thought he was in play, per se. It did not include this, that, and the other. And it included guys like Dan Quinn, who didn't get a job. I had to account for Jim Caldwell, because apparently he was in the interview room. Like, there's so many of these coaches that I have no idea whether Luke Getsy is the guy. I don't know whether Nathaniel Hackett is the guy either. Kevin O'Connell. I mean, like, I don't know. I think Josh McDaniels will be a really good coach. I think that Josh McDaniels was never coming to Chicago, ever. Like, as excited as I was, you guys heard it around like week 14, it wasn't happening. I think the Flores thing is especially weird. I can't tell what's going on there, and I'm more than willing to let the league sort it out, but that's something they've got to prove themselves out of, because I don't think the Flores, like, I don't think that Brian in particular has anything other than a decent case. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But anyways, like that's the thing, Case. I mean, the whole Tall McVay thing is real. I mean, there's right now, everybody is so willing, right, to hire offense that I understand. Look, I'm a content creator, right? Yes, I really mean it when I say that Matt Eberflus was my third choice and the best, I thought, candidate of the defensive hires. Much more willing, right, to take Matt Eberflus and ride with him and Ryan Poles than somebody like Dan Quinn. I mean, I was really having to talk myself into that one. Like, I was really having to work. And frankly, I think that Matt Eberflus is a more realistic and better hire than even the legendary Jim Harbaugh. Like, Harbaugh is somebody to get excited about, but I think that the Bears' current power structure of everybody do their job is better than the Emperor Ultraman thing that you would have gotten with $100 million deal with Jim Harbaugh, if that makes sense. Because my big ethos, if you will, is that I don't believe that any single human being is going to get everything right. Does that make sense? And so if I want to see everybody stretch out and do their job. I want to see Poles do his job. I want to see him hire a cap guy that does his job. I want to see Ian Cunningham support him. I want to see them hire that scouting core that's going to go do all the scouting. I want to see Matt Eberflus manage his coaches. I want to see those Colts defensive coaches raise that defense up. You know what I mean? Like, I want to see everybody. You know, Jay, I'm not related to Bill Polian, but like I want to see the Bears develop a structure of everybody doing their job, everybody holding each other accountable while they do their job, etc., etc., etc. So we're gonna just have to So I'm excited about the structure. I mean, I really am. I think that if they all perform even roughly at the level that we want to envision they are, that'd be really exciting. I think it's funny, Akusai, that you talk about Eberflus looks like Nagy plus Trestman. I mean, look, his presser, Eberflus's, was hilarious, if not kind of bad. I mean, I thought it was hilarious just how much coach speak there was. The whole, like, get your track shoes out. But you watch this Colts defense, and they clearly buy in, you know? It's not like you can suggest that somehow he's a poor coach because he gave an incredibly derpy presser. But the big core is going to be how he runs his offense. Can he get that detail-oriented mindset into his offense? I get you, Kuza. I got you. Apologies. But so I'm hopeful. I mean, we saw it, right? The Bears wide receivers couldn't block. They couldn't block at all. They probably couldn't block me if I went out there, right? The Bears offensive line didn't step the right direction half the time, especially in 2020. I mean, the Bears run game couldn't find itself for 3 years, despite the fact that the offensive line was better in 2018 than it was in 2019, and 2019 was better than 2020. And then we found it in 2021, which is kind of weird, but you get the idea. I mean, the Bears offensive staff couldn't teach anything. I wouldn't say, or like everybody, whether it's Nick Foles, whether it's Mitch Trubisky. No, let's stick with the additions, right? Whether it was Nick Foles or Andy Dalton, veterans that came in, or Damiere Byrd, or Mike Davis. Like, if you looked at just about anybody that came in as a veteran to Chicago, they had a career worst year, and that's not a joke. Like, outside of Allen Robinson, you had Jimmy Graham, who came in and was not great compared to Jimmy Graham standards. You had Nick Foles come in, and he had his worst ANYA ever. You had Andy Dalton come in, and he had his worst air net yards per attempt ever. I mean, like, watching the way this offense functioned, whether it was calling sprint outs for Nick Foles with Rashad Coward as the lead blocker, whether it was Ted Ginn, yeah, exactly, like whether it was like Marquise Goodwin, who did not rekindle old things. Like, you take a look at where the Bears offensive staff was, and it just wasn't detailed. Like, Nagy was either teaching badly or he was allowing bad teaching. And I have to guess it's the latter. I mean, Nagy held the locker room together. He was undeniably a better coach than Mark Trestman, but gracious alive, by the end of the season, the offense deserved every single, like, insult that we could throw at it because it was awful. Like, I agree with you, Akusai. Mike Furry was awful. Like, the wide receivers just never got any better. Like, never. And when your wide receivers can't block, you can't run anything outside, right? You can't run toss crack. You can't run outside stretch plays. You have to run everything up the middle. Everything. It's so limiting, right? And it means you can't do any of the fun stuff that San Francisco does. I don't know. Like, I think that there is diversification that can happen when you end up with detail-oriented coaching taking root inside of players, whether it's Daz Newsome, like Darnell Mooney, who cares? Like, as long as they can get guys that execute basic assignments, they can get better. Like, it's ridiculous, right? And so, Khalid, I don't know why Mike Furry was fired. What I will tell you is Mike Furry was a college teammate of Matt Nagy's, or not college. They played in the Arena Football League together. And so, like, maybe it was just that they were boys and that he was just never going to fire his guy. I don't know. You tell me. But it's not like Furry's resume desperately needed him to be better. You get the idea. Overall graded for Desai, I mean, I liked Desai. I'm not going to say a bad word about Desai. Not really. I think that the players didn't necessarily get better. Like, I do love the scheme, though. I think he was a first-time DC. Stuff can happen. Anyways, let's get back to this. We can at least finish this game before we close up. Maybe watch a little bit of the Rams. But I wanted to show you this play because you're going to recognize it. I'm just going to play it, and you can tell me in the comments what you see. Does it look familiar? Because it did to me. Every time I watch this play, I think about the fact that I saw this one live. This was a long time ago, right? The Hester plus Knox play that got a holding call and came back. But every time we see it run again, I always I'll always remember that this was one of those where I was like, man, this was such a legendary Bears play that ended up so poor, or that ended up coming back. Real bummer. But yeah, this was awesome. Like, just fun to see it in the game again. It's always cool whenever they can pull it off, too. Like, I'm always surprised that they get one guy to drop all the way back and catch it. Maybe it's just a matter of if it goes to the left, the main guy actually catches it and fields it. And if it goes to the right, then the guy falling backwards catches it and goes on top. But yeah, it's super fun. This is, harkens all the way back to, what was that, like 2011? I hope not. Am I that old? I mean, I'm getting older. But, still relatively young, I guess. But so cover 2 alignment. They let him through and call screen. But, like, this is the bread and butter. You're going to see a lot of these cover 2 alignments. I can draw it out one more time for old time's sake now. But, like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The nickelback in particular, the nickelback / Sam linebacker, these two players, they do a lot. I mean, I personally think it works even better when you've got a corner that you can trust that just shifts over to there, right? Where basically the interesting piece in this defense is that Kenny Moore, the Colts Pro Bowl defensive back, kicks inside and they bring a corner off the bench and play him there. Right? So instead of the guy coming off the bench and sitting inside, the guy comes off the bench and sits on the outside. Kenny Moore pops inside, and the Sam linebacker heads off the field. And obviously, in this case, he would be over here. But I'm into it. I mean, like this is to me a better understanding of where the NFL is at now, where you need a better player on the interior covering slot guys than you do anything else. But yeah, I mean, Jordan, I would tell you with a straight face that I think Eberflus did a very bad job in that Jags game, but for some reason, I'm just not letting it worry me too much. To me, the other 16 games of his career speak a lot more than the one right before he went and got a head coaching job. I don't know. Call it a gut feeling. But something tells me that he thought that his offense would do a better job than it did. And I'm giving him, I understand, all the benefit of the doubt in the world. So don't do that if you don't want to. Like, I completely understand. I mean, I thought Trevor did play a really good game, and there's no taking that away. But I also do think that the defensive game plan was dramatically more vanilla. It was it's the Jags, who cares? And I don't know if you can have that attitude. But maybe that makes it better for the Bears because it means that he learned something. Who's to say? But you guys know me. I'm always willing to play the optimistic side. And then all of a sudden, there the Bears are 5-12. But hey, hopefully it can't get any worse. Honestly, what I look back at, then I'll just go ahead and I'll say this, right? Have you guys thought about how close we are to not having changed the staff? Have you guys thought about how close we are, really, really how close we are to being still with Pace and Nagy? Like, completely serious. I mean, let's talk about it, right? So the Pittsburgh game was a loss, but the defense completely blew a gasket with Eddie Jackson out. If that's a win, then we're at 6-11. The San Francisco game was a beatdown, but it was looking a lot better up until Eddie Jackson got hurt. So just say that he doesn't, right? Other injuries happen, just like Khalil Mack's, sure, but let's say that the San Francisco game is a win, right? And then Kirk Cousins had 88 yards for Minnesota, right? And they won the game. And Minnesota won, right? Were we already 6-11? Sorry. Yeah, now we're 7-10. Thank you, Akusai. But so, if Minnesota wins, or if they beat Minnesota, all of a sudden they're 8-9. And hey, if one other game goes a different way, right? Just one, because I'm with you, Jordan. I mean, the most embarrassing game was 100% that Baltimore game. But if they're 8-9, I mean, let alone they beat Baltimore and they're 9-8, right? They still have a job. I mean, I would be shocked. Yes, censored. They fired Lovey at 10-6, but were they going to do it with Pace and Nagy? If they had Nagy, or if Nagy got kicked out, but they kept Pace, are you still feeling better? Because I'm personally much more excited about the prospect of Ryan Poles running the organization than somebody like Pace, who was just continually convinced that one player really would be the difference. That wouldn't help this Bears team. I mean, knowing Ryan Pace, he would have gone out and signed Ryan Jensen, he would have signed Michael Gallup, and would have been like, that's it, we're going to the Super Bowl now. I don't know. I want to believe that the Bears would have made smarter decisions, but I continually keep going back and think, I honestly think that the football gods blessed the Bears by letting them lose some games, because it's very common Bears to rally back and win a bunch. Just like the Foles game, for crying out loud. Nick Foles stole a win in Seattle. What was that, right? As I talk over, here's a classic example of Flus leaving one of his guys in a one-on-one, which is fine. They run enough disguise that here they are on third down, they get man coverage, and the guy just loses the man matchup. It happens, right? They don't have super dudes out here at corner. It's a heck of a throw, a really nice catch, and honestly, the coverage isn't even that bad. But Nick Foles just completely robbed Seattle of a win on that 3rd and 14 that I will never forget about. I mean, that was one of the most legendary doesn't matter games that I've ever seen. I mean, that was wild. The 3rd and 14 touchdown to Jimmy Graham that he pulled down and then immediately like converts the 2-point conversion. I mean, it was somebody else, or I think it was it Case? No, it was somebody else in the chat that was talking earlier about like you keep Nick Foles around on the roster so that you can go to the playoffs, and then when it comes time for the Super Bowl, you're going to bench Fields and you're going to play Nick because the guy's he's just going to win you the game. Like, I mean, it's so funny having him on the on the roster just because of the like story that Nick Foles is. He's so bizarre. But yeah, exactly, Grant. I would tell you, I would completely agree with you that the real sad part about last year is that nobody got better. In fact, it felt like I feel like Fields got better, but it didn't feel like he got better because he was coached to be. Like, I hate saying that because who cares what I think? Grain of salt, all the things, right? All the things. Yes. With that said, I really struggle to look at the wide receiver growth, which didn't exist, and the offensive line growth, which didn't exist, and somehow say that Nick Foles got better because he was coached well. Does that make sense? Like, I get the impression, I said Fields got better because he was coached well. I tend to think Fields got better because he did a bunch of dumb rookie stuff in those first couple games. He took way too many sacks. He could barely read a blitz. And then he just got beat up so badly in September and October. How could he not get better by November, December? And I think he was. I mean, I think that there was a lot of encouraging stuff, and had Fields been healthy, which is the real worry, like at this point, he had a ton of different injuries, and as long as they weren't lying, right? I mean, that's something to worry about, that he had 5 injuries in the same season. But I really think that what we were missing, like what we didn't get that other quarterbacks got, like Trevor Lawrence in week 17, is that Fields didn't play in the Giants game and just smoke a bunch of people, you know? Fields didn't play in the second Minnesota game and compete, right? Fields didn't get to play in a lot of the cakewalk games. Fields didn't get to play Thanksgiving against the Lions, right? He had, 12 passing attempts? Was it 17 passing attempts? Like, he had some very, very low. Yes, it was 17, right? 17 passing attempts in week 4 against Detroit and just spaced the Lions, like threw the ball all over the yard, so on and so forth, right? Fields didn't get to just go out there and smoke a whole bunch of bad teams. He got to play the Bucks, lucky for him. He got to play the Packers twice. Hooray. He got to play like a good Ravens team. He got to play what was that? AFC champion, like 49ers team and a Pittsburgh team that fought to the playoffs till the bitter end. Like, Fields got to play a lot of the meat of the Bears schedule and then was too hurt to play any of the bad teams. And I don't know, like what I saw in there personally was a lot of growth. I mean, that second Minnesota game really spoke to me. Yes, the Browns game, absolutely, Akusai. I mean, that was ugly. But I think there was a lot to be encouraged about. I completely understand anybody that wants Fields to prove it. I get it. I get it. You know what I mean? Yeah, Brian, we just got distracted. Yeah, what Browns game? Exactly. Check this out. I mean, seriously, I love watching this defense. We'll get back to it. This one goes out to you, Brian. But so, what is this? It's a second down, and one thing that I really love about what they do here, let me see, I'm trying to get a better view of the down counter, because we can. Because I've lost track of what down it is. Is it first down here? Let's see. It looks like first down. Yeah. So in this setup, they're gonna line up like they're running man, and I think they are actually running man. But let's see. They drop off. Looks like some kind of man, but I am just so happy with what this linebacker does right here. This is a second stringer, right? He follows Kyler's eyes. as you've got a whole bunch of in-breaking patterns right here with this guy stammering. He's about to head out. He's coming back for the ball off of like a smoke screen and so on and so forth. But one thing that I really loved about this was this linebacker follows Kyler's eyes, drifts from here into the passing lane, and is able to make a play on this ball. It's not a pick, but he knocks it away, right? This is a second stringer. So he's disciplined enough, as you'll see right here, named EJ Speed. Yes, his last name is literally Speed. To just walk himself into the passing lane and make sure that if the guy goes inside, he's got the ball played. Like, I think that's really cool. Like, I really do, because this is why this defense is friendly to corners. Because 35 here gets beat on an out and in route, but he's giving it away. He's playing, they call this playing your leverage with number 30. Because 30 right here knows that he's got help to his inside. So he's going to shade extra hard on that outside shoulder, because if Zach Ertz makes a break on the ball there, or like if he breaks outside, he's got to have it. But if he breaks inside, he's got help. And so when he does, Flus's coaching kicks in. That's really nice, because that's two backup players. 30 is a backup and 45 is a backup. But I get really excited watching this. Like, I really do, because the more we watch Duke Shelley, the more we watched, name your second stringer, right? Kendall Vildor. Artie Burns popped off randomly. But the more you watched them, the less it felt like they were getting any better, or even, frankly, being really put in position to succeed. In this setup, the Colts look like they're again playing man. Hard to tell, because I think this could be cover 3, where he's just not supposed to where he sees that he's going to go curl in and just follows him. But I think it's man of some kind. Maybe more like a cover 1 man, but 21 here certainly plays it like it's 3. Because he just backs off. Maybe he just gets beat. I mean, it's really hard to tell with some of these things. But, yeah, exactly, Jordan. Like, to me, the number one that I think is super cool about Flus is that you can see him pulling the bottom up. Like, he gets more out of less, which is what the Bears need. I mean, it'll be exciting to see what he does, like Jordan's kind of talking about, with better edge players, for sure. But even whether it's him scheming with corners, I mean, you want to talk about having a coach that adjusts to the players that he has, say what you will. But Flus is able clearly to account for the fact that he doesn't have the greatest corners in the world. And guys like Todd Bowles, even, who run a scheme that's much more corner heavy, don't. Like, they just get beat in many cases. The Bears beat the Buccaneers at one point. Not because of necessarily corner stuff, but that's just me reminding us about one of the weirder Thursday night games in a while. But you get the idea. How did he get so open? Look at Carson Wentz go. Yeah! Breaks a tackle. Heads up field. Gotta love a good old tight end rumble, right? But yeah, I think there's a lot to get excited about when it comes to Eberflus. It's just funny going through these games, because we're going to spend a lot less time talking about complex coverages on first and second down, JT, than we are talking about assignments, who played it well, and execution. Because the scheme is not transparent, but it's not overcomplicated. It's not, yeah, he's bad, Jordan. Like, it's not near as, you get it. It's not near as complex or interwoven as I think Sean Desai made things, but it's definitely much more execution based. I think Flus is really good at teaching it. I think Flus is also really good at identifying tendencies. I don't have great proof for that just yet. I mean, what I'm seeing is more that he adjusts well over the course of a game, tends to clamp down when he needs to, but also you'll see his defense play everything a little bit differently. That's pretty common across the NFL. Most defensive coordinators are going to adjust their rules a little bit. They're going to say, okay, so now on cover 2, you're going to drop a couple extra steps, like the middle linebacker, the Mike. You're going to drop a little bit more than usual. We're going to play a lot more Tampa 2 instead of standard cover 2. You'll see that, right? But it's there's been enough going on that I certainly can't be like, oh, this. But this general scheme, again, we're looking at, instead of too high, they've now put one in the box because it's first down and they think it's a running down. And guess what? They're not right they're right. It's a QB draw and they're ready for it. The extra man in the box really helps there because the safety's obviously going to cut him off, and then Speed, the backup, is going to make a play on it. So they put themselves in a 2-on-1 scenario, and they're able to stop the Cardinals for a gain of 3. And yeah, it's not to say, Sensor, that the D was an issue and it should get better. Honestly, like, I would tell you that I think Sean Desai was was pretty good. I mean, I think he got a lot out of not much, but I also think that it's more about defensive foundation to me. It's more about, okay, like, Matt, we're going to give you and your staff a 4th and a 6th round pick and some UDFAs and a couple free agents. Like, what can you do with that? And I think that there's a decent chance that they can do a good bit. Like, I really do. It's not like I'm trying to sit here and predict the Bears are going to be amazing, but I do think that they'll be top half of the league, push for top 10. If this Colts defense can do it, they can too. Now, could take them a couple years to get like really good at it, but the coverages are just simple enough that I think that over time, especially by the back half of the season, as long as they're not dealing with wild, like crazy injuries, they should be all right. But we'll have to see. Let me see here. Vadar, you're totally right that Matt Nagy was a coach of offense that couldn't fix the offense, but it's worth remembering that Matt Nagy was also an offensive coach under an offensive coach. So whether it was Reed's system, I mean, Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten a job, for instance. It could just be that like, for lack of a better way to put it, the Chiefs system doesn't necessarily need an offensive coordinator, that they're pretty good. Like, obviously you'll have one, right? Whether it's somebody like Frank Kafka, whether it's somebody like Bieniemy or Matt Nagy, like you'll have an offensive coordinator. But in case, I don't know if EB got fired. I thought his contract extended, or like contract expires, but we'll see. There are rumors that he's out for sure. But this is awesome, by the way. I love this. Like, this isn't even necessarily crazy talent. We are still talking about a second stringer, right? But here they go with, like, check this play out, because now we're just talking about coaching as we watch this. But what you're going to see is they start with 30 down low and 40 whatever up top. They're going to switch them, right? Where you're going to see right here, they switch them right at the snap. They're trying to time all that stuff up, or like up to the snap. But now they've got this safety is squaring up with the tight end, and they've got 30 dropping back. Kyler does a good job seeing it. He sees that he's got an outbreaking deep route against somebody on the inside hash opposite from where he's going. He should be dead to rights. But credit to the safety, whether it's coaching, whether it's more gifts than we realize, he does a good job recognizing the route or breaking on it, and a just lofty enough ball gives him a chance to dive in and knock it away. Say what you will. Again, I mean, this is hustle. This is solid coaching, a quick hip flip, a full out sprint, and a deep dive for an undercut. I mean, like, we could meme on it, right? About like the whole anybody could tackle thing, but this is what Eddie Jackson's talking about, where it would have been easy for him to take an angle straight this way and go make a tackle, right? But instead, he sprints out, he dives, and knocks it away. I mean, that's sweet. Like, 30's been having a solid game, 45's had a really solid game. Like, that's really good. I mean, it's just fun to watch too, because this guy's the fill-in, you know? And you could say what you will about, like, hey, he's a talented guy. He is, right? But Eberflus clearly is getting a lot out of his players, and that's what really matters. And I love how every once in a while they'll throw out, like, one of these mug looks. I love these things, the Zimmer stuff, right? I eat it up. So I just like seeing it. The variation that Flus will throw at these guys is super fun to watch. And yeah, you're going to occasionally, again, give up situations where you've got 27, who is Xavier Rhodes, I think. He's sitting in press, and he's just going to lose with, like, a capital L, right? Where right off the snap, whoever this receiver is toasts him on the outside, beats him to the edge, and Kyler places a picture perfect throw. Goodness gracious. I'm with you, Case. Like, that's great. And the offense is going to earn it. And Flus is going to make the offense earn it. But I love that, yeah, Grant, no kidding. I just saw your comment about, like, as Odom stretched out, he was thinking, oh, gosh, this better work. But I love the variety that Flus's defense brings. It's even in its variety, it's not overcomplicating itself. It's not like they're switching, say, from like a zone spot drop setup to something totally different. They're just setting up in different formations. Like, they're willing to put both of their linebackers in that double A mug and then just drop them off, or at least look like they might. Here late in the season, they were sending more blitzes, but you never know. I mean, this is how the Bengals completely fooled Fields and took him into or managed to convince him into an interception. Jimmy an interception out of young week 2 Justin Fields, where they just flat out fooled him. I love this kind of stuff. I think that it works on more quarterbacks than people realize, because you got to remember, I mean, we joke around about Dan Orlovsky a lot, right? But it's 100% a thing when you look back at, like, one thing that Orlovsky said a while ago that I thought was very cool was he talked about how his quarterback coaches were like, we can't put you in the game if you're good at 57 out of 64 or out of 64 snaps. You got to be 64 out of 64. You can't be 59 out of 60. You got to be 60 out of 60. It makes sense. And I know that most quarterbacks aren't. Like, to pretend that they are is ridiculous. But it only takes 1 to 2 mistakes to completely ruin a game. And if you don't believe me, go watch any Carson Wentz game. I mean, these things are... Don't do that to yourself. I don't know. It's weird, because every time I turn on Carson Wentz, like, I remember during the season, people were talking about how he was fine. But every time I watch this tape, it's nasty out there. Not my favorite quarterback. Very glad that the Bears ended up with anybody else compared to that. I really tried to talk myself into him too. Like, I really did back in the day. But here you got solid play along the edge as the Bears are able to force out another third down. With it being third down, they're going to... Oh, what are you about to do, Kyler? Oh, big stop. Good job. But so the Cardinals go with a condensed set. They've been much more spread based all game long, and so Eberflus counters by just sticking an extra guy in the box. Why wouldn't he? His players are comfortable playing out of that, and they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the line. They do a lot of this wide 9 kind of look. I love it. I think that it really helps their defensive line at least get better angles, and then from there, it's just press man. Somebody open, but a linebacker or 2 linebackers by the looks of it dropping into it, and then up on the front, 51 gets right on through, and from there, I mean, this is a really neat little play. It's nothing wild. It just counters what they want to do well. And the wide 9 lineup gets 51 a great run at Kyler, who probably drops a little bit too far as he pushes him out. 45, again, the second stringer, rolls on over, is able to help force that incompletion. And here at the core end of the game, because the score right now for anybody, I wouldn't blame you if you haven't been counting, it's 22-13, and this is a huge stop. As they're, I think it might be 22-10 right now, but they're going to force a field goal that it doesn't quite end the game for them, but it doesn't help. I mean, Case, it's weird you talk about trading a first for Wentz. I get it. I mean, especially if you've got Frank Reich, who was more than likely, I don't want to say pounding the table, but it's not like the Colts had this wild, like, exciting set of options in front of them that they could have gone in a different direction. But I get why they did it. It's not a player that I would have wanted to hitch my wagon to. Like, me personally. He just got so crazy down the stretch. Just, ugh. But, yeah, I mean, Jordan, exactly like you're talking about, the really weird part about this breakdown is that, again, Eberflus's scheme is going to change a little bit as he comes to Chicago. But it's a good scheme. It's almost entirely just hustle. It's grit. It's effort. It's really cool results out of players that you weren't expecting that you weren't expecting to play as well as they did. It's film study, it's details, it's all that stuff that Flus talks about showing up. I mean, we got to remember that Matt Nagy spent years in Chicago talking about details, talking about finding the whys, and it just didn't matter. You didn't see it on the field, right? And at the end of the day, if you can't see it on the field, truly, who cares? And so, in my opinion, again, just a personal opinion, I feel like what we are looking at is a coach that means what he says. And so he's got a defense that's more than happy to take advantage of when an offense can't handle a snap. I mean, look at this. Somehow, would you believe it, they've found themselves in, you'd better believe, it's not quite cover two, but they're basically pressing Arizona for all they're worth. They want Arizona to beat them with throws over the top in this case, and I love that attitude that they're going to go right at them, even from a coverage perspective, right? It's the idea that you can be aggressive without blitzing, and I love it because I do think that as teams get really blitz heavy, that can be really good against teams that aren't very good. But I think in the playoffs especially, the more that you can defend the pass, the better your defense tends to be. That's just my philosophy of it, but it's something that I do believe in. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens here. It looks like they're willing to play a little bit more quarters. I'm wondering what 2 did with his arm here, because it looked like he sort of tried to shuck somebody. But let's see, we might be, because now time's bleeding down on him. We're about to see basically the final 2-point conversion. Then congratulations, Bears fan, you've watched a whole Flus game, slowly but surely, as we talked about. Sometimes Flus, but here they're going to play, like, even at the end of the game, as they look for these, like, late things, instead of playing prevent, right? Because right now there's about 5 minutes on the clock. They wouldn't have to play prevent, but instead they're going to line up in just a straight man look because they're willing to do it, right? They're willing to go make your guy beat their guy. And I just like the attitude. Honestly, I think that there's a little bit of swagger to the way that Flus calls his defenses. I think that there's an energy that he can imbue to his players by saying, hey, late in the game, you're going to, we're going to make you beat us. And if you beat us, great. But I don't think you will. I think that can energize a team. And I'm excited to see what it does in Chicago. I think that talks about top 12 make a lot more sense to me than talks about top 5. For instance, but like you'll still get plays just like this where 34 completely misplays his leverage, because in this Colts defense, they just make these mistakes a lot, where especially the corners in particularly, like they're so focused on this outside file that a lot of times these in breakers are where they're really weak. And trust me, you will see that in the game that we're about to flip to. But here in Arizona, They put the game in the defense's hands, just like John is talking about, and the defense was able to come up with a huge, like we saw the safety earlier, no turnover outside of the safety, but generally shut down a pretty good offense and helped their offense climb to a 22-16 win. And from there it was over. Like that was a turnover on downs right there. Kyler missed the throw. Now there are weaknesses. And when I talk about problems with this Colts team, you're especially going to see it here in this game, where we don't need to watch a ton of it. You guys are about to see a phenomenal football game here between LA, the now new Super Bowl champions, and the Colts. And the scheme's still there, right? Same thing, but this is a less positive one. There's some cool stuff. It's not all bad. I'm not about to pretend that they just get rolled. They do lose 27-24, but this opening drive is a great reminder of where things can be, if that makes sense. Because I personally feel like McVay comes out and attacks this defense just about perfectly. Now, remember, this is week 2. So if Flus's defense was really this vulnerable, they people would have done this more often, and you would have seen it in the game that you just watched, right? So there's no cause for necessarily like alarm, but here they start in too high, they roll down, it's first down, they want that extra guy in the box, same philosophy, just 15 weeks earlier, right? And they come down, 38 does a great job finding a hit, making it, right? Okay, so second and long. And you'll see what it is that the Rams do from there, because I love the play they call next. Like, I'm not 100% sure what the concepts are, but the philosophy behind this play right here is so outstanding, it's insane. Like, the Colts have just failed on fourth down, just so you know what's going on in the game, right? So this is where the Colts are looking for a little bit of magic on defense, because if they can get the ball back, maybe they can take the lead here at home. Now, I want you to watch that. So this guy's right here. He's going to stand still. Watch 37, because he's just going to bounce this way and that way over and over and over pre-snap. He's clearly trying to time up his disguise, but it's kind of funny watching him just bounce, 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 bounce. Like, it shows you the disguise very obviously, but it's funny watching it, because when we say they disguise a lot, they do. But from there, the Colts are going to basically be looking at kind of a man with a little bit of a rat zone defender right there and there. But man, one thing that the Colts do here, so they've got an in-breaking route. Let me see. Is it in-breaking? No, it's just a vert. All right, so sweet. Let's talk about it. Because this play, if you want to talk about something that would kill cover two, this is it. Where they're going to have Cooper Kupp on a straight vert down the field, and that's going to draw this defender's attention. So as it does, and basically you're going to see everybody get manned up. Like, two defenders right there. The running back comes out of the backfield and draws Darius Leonard. This safety right here ends up watching Tyler Higbee also coming out of the backfield. So both Leonard and the safety are taking a look at that, as this is Robert Woods just smokes his corner on the outside and finds a seam in the middle. If you can occupy those linebackers, especially if you can use running backs to get them out of the way. In this case, they use a tight end in the backfield. Like, they use that H-back that we've normally seen J.P. Holtz take up, but they actually load it with a pass catcher, which does a lot of things to this defense. It ends up drawing two defenders, like we see, and Woods gets open for a nice strike. They're going to get a couple of those, but I want to quickly highlight the corner. This is something that I think better corner play could avoid, but take a look at how Woods is able to get this guy to sell out on his leverage. Like, a quick move on the outside completely turns that corner's hips, and from there, Woods is, I don't want to say he's home free, but just about. Like, very, very good job by the receiver, sure, but the DB gives away his leverage, I think, a little bit too easily. It got better in the Cardinals game, for sure. I mean, remember, this is week 2, so most of this, like, they've got a little bit of training camp coaching under them, quite a bit. I mean, they've got OTAs, they've got training camp, they've got the rest of their football careers, but at the same time, you do hope for better. This Colts defense is not filled with a ton of, like, dudes, so to speak. Then they go play action. They're able to find Darrell Henderson ends up absolutely just wide open on this play. 37 has the right idea, because he heads this way to stop a run as that extra guy in the box we talk about with a single high setup. And from there, he just goes and he looks for work, but he completely loses track of the fact that there's a running back involved in the play. Like, I love the aim and the idea behind getting back to try to take up take up some of this underneath space so that Kupp can't find his way back over here. I get it, but you can't leave a running back wide open. It's just a blown coverage, honestly. And Stafford finds the guy, and they're able to pick up, I mean, truly some of the easiest 20 yards that you're going to get through the air, quote unquote, through the air. That's if it doesn't count as a run. I mean, I didn't look back into whether it's a straight lateral or not, but you can't have these kinds of blown coverages, and this is, again, I don't want to say it's like some massive Flus detriment, but McVay's doing a great job, a better job than Cliff Kingsbury, of showing that this defense is still limited. I mean, this isn't some like crazy defense that's just going to lock absolutely everybody down, because here they're going to go with a first down man look, and they bring a nickel blitz. Like, we've not seen a ton of blitzes. When they're in trouble, they'll blitz for it, and 38 just gets beat by Van Jefferson. So this is 38 again, and he's going to get beat on that interior again, where here he just fades back. Jefferson cuts underneath, and makes one of the easier inside dig grabs you're going to get. Like, if there is a flaw in Eberflus's coaching, it's that he's so concerned. I don't want to say concerned, but the cornerback is so concerned with inside leverage, or like with protecting that outside file right here, basically everything in this direction, that I think inside stuff will really bite him. Now, I expect the Bears' safeties to do a better job than this, which might seem a little weird, but I think a better cover 2, cover 4 safety, Eddie Jackson, would squeeze this route a little bit, because what are you going to do when Kupp goes over there? You're not helping anything necessarily in 37's case, but your corner needs that help, because if he's playing, like if the defense calls him to play in this outside direction where he's got to cover all this stuff over here, like 37 will come down and make a better play. At least I think so. But we'll see what happens. Like I am curious to just see how they deploy everybody. It's something I really want to know. But 38 in particular, 38 and 37, not having a great start to this game. And we got a really sweet play coming up. Like really, really cool on McVay's part. But it'll be wild to see just how all this goes. And the Colts front four did a really good job against the run. I mean, they did. But never, ever, Jordan. He's a good safety. Very good safety. Is he overpaid? Maybe. Probably. I mean, it's hard to extract $15 million out of safety. There's no question about that. But he's a very good player. Very good player. I will defend him till I'm dead. And I think he's going to bounce back, honestly. Like, if the Bears can put some talent around any of these defensive backs, I think Jalen's going to look a lot better. I think Eddie's going to look a lot better. I think Roquan's going to look a lot better. But, yeah, fight me, Brandon. It's hard to extract $15 million out of a position that's so hard for teams to scout, and people are so bad at scouting and getting value out of. I mean, the highest paid safeties in football, I think, really struggle to generate their value. But I do think that Eddie's going to get a lot closer to it next year. At least I hope so. I mean, I've been saying that for a little while, but since 2019, I think in 2020, he played outside of himself a little bit. In 2021, he had a really good season of not getting thrown to, and then he got mossed by Justin Jefferson at the very end of the year, which sucks. Like, I mean, you want to talk about that moment where the whole Bears community got together to just dunk on Eddie Jackson? Like, that was the worst exclamation point to his season ever. But it happened. And so we just got to wait. But I really think that he's somebody that is going to be a key piece of this Eberflus defense. You need good safety play. And I think having one and finding a second is a lot better, much, much, much better than having none and trying to find two, to say the least. If I got to pick two defensive backs, I would rather, honestly, in this defense, I would rather have both safeties and figure your corners out. But having one safety at least to go with the corner is really, really nice. But so, anyways, here's a sweet, sweet play. Really cool. Check this out. That's Cooper Kupp in the backfield, right? So to get Cooper off the line, one thing that they do here is instead of having him in the slot, they pull him into the backfield position, which is going to draw a safety down and put a safety in man defense. Whether it's man or zone, it's honestly kind of hard to tell, but the safety is going to get Kupp on this assignment, right? And you're going to have 89 Tyler Higbee fade out of the way. You're going to have these receivers do some kind of pattern. I'm sure one of them is going to go inside or something. But the real key is that you're going to end up with, once he's out of the way, all this space for Kupp in ISO against one defender. And would you believe it? He is just about to tear him up. 37 just gets broken, like crushed by Kupp, who barely makes an outside move and still manages to break this guy's ankles. Like, it's great that 37's playing outside read for sure, and this linebacker could probably do a decent job of getting back a little further, but wow, I mean, Kupp makes one outside stab right there and knocks the guy all the way to the ground and makes just a super easy catch on the inside, like streaks straight up the middle and just toasts 37. Again, could Leonard fade backwards? Maybe, but I think that the corner's got to do a better job of not getting, broken in half. And Stafford makes an easy enough throw, puts it just layered right over Leonard and into Kupp's hands, and they're up 7. Like, it's not like McVay just boat races Eberflus in this game, but you can feel the talent difference in this sort of thing. Yeah, sure, I'll just give you the whole play. But so it's as easy as it gets. I think it's super creative, by the way. Stuff like this is exactly what Mooney could do. Like, no, I'm not saying Mooney's Cooper Kupp, but loading a wide receiver in the backfield and then passing out of it, like that is classic Z receiver, slot receiver kind of magic that you can get a matchup that you can exploit. So it's really cool to see the way that Stafford then, in case you didn't notice it, Stafford also does a really good job of holding the safety with his eyes. I mean, we all saw that crazy Stafford like no look throw where he kept his eyes that way. Super Bowl, everybody's talking about it. I mean, it's like the highlight play of the whole second half because there just wasn't much to talk about. I mean, I get it. Everybody's really excited and it is a cool no look throw, you know what I mean? But it's funny to think about how like that's the highlight, like a quick completion over the middle. There was a no looker because we didn't get much else. But so Stafford's been good with his eyes basically his whole life. And so the spacing is awesome. The matchup's great. Like you were saying, Case, I don't think he gives up the gun. If he had come back and stared where he was ultimately going to throw, I think Leonard could have faded in there, but he just didn't give him the chance to. Super cool play by McVay. Way to get Kupp into open space. Really, really rad. Let me see. Oh, we have our first turnover of the evening to talk about. We'll go ahead and we'll talk a little bit, talk a little more. Are there any questions that I can answer before we kind of enter into our final phase? We obviously hit our stream breakdown goal on account of Jason Records, which is rad. So I'll come up with some Getsy content for sometime like this time next week or something like that. So that's super cool. And thank you, Jason. But it'll be cool to see what we do next. Anything anything y'all want to talk through because we can talk a little bit more, but there's a lot of this that it's cool to watch. We'll have to see it develop in Chicago. I wouldn't get too tied to what the Colts are because a lot of their stuff is kitted to their personnel. Credit to them. I mean, they know that they don't have the greatest corners in the world, and they don't play a defense that puts a lot of strain on their corners. When McVay went into bunch sets, they kicked a guy up here because even if they were going to get passed on, they wanted to make sure that they could prep for the run. And here on play action, 95 does a great job with this of just getting downhill. Like, you watch, is it 95? Let me see here. Because I think it's this guy who just doesn't get blocked, and he'll take it and just roll on through. Oh, man, Case. Jalen Ramsey getting tossed was nasty. That was one of those that was like, oh, gosh. Sky Judge, please. Like, sorry, I know. I get it. It's super fun. But you get the idea. I was just like, John, I think that Angelo Blackson's a better anti-run defensive lineman than people give him credit for, but I do think that they're going to need somebody. I mean, maybe it's Kyrus Tonga taking a step. Could be, right? Maybe it's a free agent that they bring in. Maybe it's a draft pick, somebody like John Ridgway out of Arkansas. I know sticks out to me. He just plays with a ton of power, but they're definitely not going to have an easy time stopping the run with Roquan Smith, a hole at inside linebacker, and a hole at 3 tech and 1 tech. But they do have some dudes that can play those spots. Whether they can play them well, good question. But they'll need to do, I think somebody getting Hicks, or like if they do sign Hicks, I do think that would make a lot of sense. And like Brandon's saying, I think they do a lot of secret goodness with the way that with the way Eberflus aligns his fronts. They're not near as exotic as what Desai did, where he put like Khalil Mack right here or something like that. But you'll get, whether it's wide alignments like the wide 9 that we saw, whether it's somebody like in this case it would be Roquan Smith sitting right on the line right here where like Leonard is. there's a lot of neat stuff that they do to at least mix up offensive line alignments. And like you guys can see here, I mean, it's so funny because we talked all year about outside zone, right? In this, the rules seem to suggest that this lineman has 95 and that this guy is supposed to go past and hit 58. And because the rules just happen to get confused, maybe these two guys just end up lost, honestly. 95 breaks right through. Stafford turns around, says, oh, shoot, and just ditches the ball. Honestly, good thing he got away with it. But so then, next play after that, the Colts are going to make a play. Like, you want to talk about discipline? This corner does a great job sticking with Robert Woods. This safety brackets Tyler Higbee along with the deep safety. It's actually not a dissimilar play to the one that Stafford did the no-looker on, a hitch with a dig behind it, and Stafford lets that ball flutter a little higher than he should to a guy who's not open, and it's picked. 37 makes a nice play here. It's cool to see the Colts come through with stuff. Like, because of the way that they are able to play a lot of these disguises and a lot of these disciplined coverages, they're able to kind of create plays at least every once in a while. Which I think is rad. Like, they're not some crazy turnover heavy defense as far as I understand. I could be completely wrong on that. But even still, really, really good. And yeah, Case, I agree with you. What I think at least is that Stafford thought he could influence that, or that him staring at this guy would pull, I think that's Okereke, but it didn't. And so then when he goes to throw, I think he lets it off a little higher than he wants to, probably partially because of pressure. Like, you guys want to talk about something to get excited about? Here, the Colts actually apply pressure from 94. I circled the wrong guy. 94 gets through, and it's almost immediately an interception. Like, no, correlation is not always causation, but the Colts are so bad. I mean, like, I'll show it again for the folks that weren't here earlier. Let me see. It is this chart. It's not that chart. It's this chart. When you go and you look at hurries in the NFL, the Colts are dead worst at 37 hurries. Nobody has less than 45 hurries. The Bears had 46. It's weird to see the Bears this low. But, like, highest percentage of hurries was 15. The Bears' percentage of hurries was not 15. It was, like the Colts, it was 5%, which is crazy. At least it's crazy to me. So they end up with almost no hurries. If you looked at pressure rate, they're second worst in that category at 18%. And they don't blitz a lot, so sure, you could say that maybe there's something to that. But when you are second worst and worst in the NFL at anything relating to, like, pressuring the quarterback, you've got a real problem. And at least I look at Quinn and Mack and Gibson, frankly, and think that it can't be that bad. Like, exactly, Jordan. They've tried to invest in their pass rush, and they just ain't getting no pass rush. And they were still like a top half defense, if not slightly better than that. I mean, even without any pass rush at all, and relatively poor corners, and like one safety, they just brought the bottom up and made it work. I have to show you another play that I think is hilarious. This one's just funny. This one goes out to all the people that love Carson Wentz. Sorry, guys. But so this just blows my mind. Like, take a look at this play right here. I cannot believe Carson does this. They have already turned it over on downs, like, earlier in the game. And Carson just goes ahead, takes a snap, fakes a handoff, and he's going to throw a pick. That's not a joke. I'm with you, John. I wish we could steal Kenny Moore from the Colts. But, like, you want to talk about, like, all the memes, all the Carson Wentz, like, garbage? Here he is throwing the shuffle pass, and sure, Doyle here, like, the timing gets messed up. But can you make up him throwing a pick to a defensive lineman in the end zone? I mean, imagine the reactions if Andy Dalton, Justin Fields, Nick Foles, Mitch Trubisky, Chase Daniel, any Bears quarterback you can think of, imagine them doing that. Like, there are just these Wentz moments all over the Indianapolis film where you're like, oh my word. Like, it's not always Carson, you're awful, right? It's not that simple. It was a no-look shuffle, John, or shovel, but it's just so unbelievably unlucky. Like, remember, the Colts lose this game 27-24, and they've already started with 2 turnovers, back-breaking ones at that. So any of that, like any of this stuff comes back, and you get a lot better. But the Colts defense hustles. Like, I mean, there's no doubting, at least to me, the more that we watch this film, that like even when things aren't going well, they do a good job of picking their head back up, or like putting their head back on straight and getting back at it. And whether that's they made a play, whether that's they didn't make a play and they need to go make one, honestly, the coaching just seems consistent. Guys fire on all cylinders. They do their best, which is so simple, right? And silly. But we see a lot of development out of this defense. We see corners getting better. The way that you've seen guys get put on skates, you know what I mean? Like, that didn't happen in that Week 16 game. Anybody that actually watched the like that first game that we watched, you didn't see corners, and it wasn't even the starters. They were all the backups on account of injuries. Like, these Rams just keep, or you'll see that they just keep exploiting bad leverage, and they keep, let's say, providing some teaching film for free to the Colts. But by the end of the season, they even had second stringers playing with better fundamentals than what the starters had at the start of the season. I mean, there is a lot to get excited about. Nobody needs to get like, whoa, over the moon. Wow, Bears defense, going to be amazing. Not necessarily. But I do tend to think that they're going to at least try to get all the juice out of the lemon that they can. And where I think they will succeed is maybe the stars won't become uber stars, but the rest of the roster should get a lot better. And I think that that can make a big difference, because once Duke Shelley, it's probably not going to be Duke Shelley specifically, but once they can get a little bit more out of their nickel spot, out of their second linebacker spot, out of their second safety spot. Here, by the way, looks like they're going third down. They're going man off of that third down, and they're able to basically use Cooper Kupp to Jimmy open Tyler Higbee, which is neat. Like, a lot of the play designs that McVay went out here and dropped on him were legit ones. Like Tyler Higbee versus, I think that's Leonard. It is. So one thing that I feel like McVay did a really, really good job of was there has to be motion here. I would be blown away if Higbee just walked on out and lined up here. Maybe he did, though, right? And when he did, have you noticed that Darius Leonard is sitting here across from him? So this is very obviously man, right? McVay did a really good job of helping expose, or at least help his offense against this Eberflus defense. And hey, it's not even to say that like we're talking about some steely-toothed defense that was tearing everybody open. It's week 2, right? But McVay did a much better job than Kingsbury, because now you know it's man. And once you know it's man, it's very easy to like this matchup if you're Matt Stafford, who just waits for the wide receivers around him to clear out and hits the wide open tight end who's got a lot of space for a first down. I mean, it's cool. And like, easy to fall in love with a lot of McVay's offensive stuff. I think that their offense, honestly, tends to unveil a lot of cool things that then defenses pick up on by around week 9. At least we've seen that over the last couple of seasons. But even so, ideas on just simple motions just like that, I mean, then you get the blown play. The weird part about watching McVay film is McVay's like it's going to sound weird. It's like a better Nagy. Like, it sounds so silly, but you still get this stuff where you get blown plays that I do feel like it's easy to just sort of not talk about. I mean, who cares? The guy just won the Super Bowl, right? But it's always funny when I watch some coaches have just these complete blow-nos, especially at the start of the season. Though, a lot of times they can continue, and I'm like, I know what that is. Been there. Let's see. The Colts just killed. They just smoked, or not the Colts. The Rams just killed the Colts on these digs. Like, awesome. They did a great job. This is something that whether it's Roquan Smith, like I think that one thing that they did a really, really, really good job here of doing was that they basically just weaponized Cooper Kupp in all situations. Like, hey, if you've got one of the most dangerous slot receivers in history on your team, sure, run a quick curl. Pull that middle of field defender towards him. Like, you'll get that guy over the middle open, which is cool. Like, it's not great if you're a big fan of the Eberflus defense and you want the Colts to win, but it puts it puts Leonard in a conflict scenario here where if he maintains this defense like this spot, he'll take away the inside dig that ends up getting completed, but he might give up something to Cooper Kupp that, God forbid, he break a tackle and then he's often moving. Instead, he plays just a little closer than maybe he should, and Stafford does a great job getting the ball to a wide open Robert Woods, who is open for another first down. This defense is a lot easier, I think anyways, to plan for when you know that they're going to be running these cover two, like, man over the middle looks. And Eberflus is even attempting to it is the same route combo. Brandon, I was thinking about that. Like, Eberflus is even attempting to adjust for this because he's playing a lot more man. I think you guys are seeing that, where there's a lot less cover two because they've already shown, they being McVay, that they're going to beat a lot of that cover two because they're ready for it. So Eberflus is attempting to adjust, which, hey, I appreciate the fact that we can see instant adjustments. The Rams are just really good. And honestly, I think that they have a lot more one-on-one matchups that I think that favor them compared to the Colts at this stage. I mean, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp are both phenomenal. I think Van Jefferson is surprisingly underrated. Like, I think he's a solid receiver at the very least. Like, when you're talking about a wide receiver 3, he was certainly productive for me in fantasy. Let me put it that way. But anyways, all that to say that this Rams defense, or this Rams game, is a great one to watch because you can get a sense for just how, like, this was Eberflus's empty the clip game, right? I mean, whether it's mugged up fronts that sure we've seen, but if you can't beat Flus's cover two, why would he stop playing it? And in this case, I think we're looking at a third down where they're going to go with another, like, double mug look. They're going to have Kenny Moore one-on-one against Cooper Kupp, and it's just not good enough right here, as Kupp's going to use a natural screen that he gets from him, right, or from this player being right here, and from that point, this route's over. I mean, Cooper Kupp is so dangerous. It's like watching a defense just get schooled on, and I get it. I mean, right here, the Colts are thinking we've got to generate some kind of pressure, right? And so instead of having somebody drop off and potentially cover that zone, they're bringing him, because every time they've dropped him off, they're getting beat, you know? But man, like, that's exactly where, yeah, Jordan, I think that, like, stronger safety play could shut some of this stuff down. Like, especially if you've got a cover two safety that can play cover two, or you can, especially, I mean, for crying out loud, if you've got a cover four safety, you can really work with a lot of this, because the big exciting thing about playing, say, cover four, which they are not set up to run right now. I mean, maybe they could, but cover four, when you've got corners, or like two corners that play those outside files and safeties that play these inside files, one thing that you can do is that you can have a really good safety squeeze up to basically dare the offense to throw over the top, because a good safety will be able to take a look at the route combinations coming at them and either drop back right there, like when they need to, and otherwise attack forward, because whether it's McVay, whether it's Shanahan, there are tons of offenses right now that are all out trying to victimize offenses on these, victimize defenses with these inside digs. These inside, whether it's backside or front side digs, are killing defenses. And obviously they're having a lot of success here over the middle, generating easy 15, 20-yard throws, like as far as air yardage goes. They do a good job here. I think that's I'm always surprised that Stafford didn't throw this to Higbee, because Higbee ends up shaking loose a little bit later, but maybe Stafford just wanted the 4 yards ish. Are you seeing Brandon 37 to the field every single time? Like, it's not one or the other, it's just 37? I don't feel like he's having a phenomenal game based on what we're seeing. But right now, it almost feels like, honestly, it feels like Flus is just trying to find any coverage that can slow these guys down, and they're just not finding anything. Like, here they've got somebody in, it looks like cover 3 with a blitz on it. Do we have a blitz? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's a blitz. So we've got like a zone blitz with 2 guys underneath and what seems to be cover 3 on the backside, which, let's see, that's 5. I'm missing a defender. Either that or I'm missing a... No, wait, we've got a 6-man blitz. Man, look at that. So then they barely create pressure, but they get the ball out to Cup. Because Stafford was as good against the blitz as he was. Gosh. Like, I appreciate the exoticness that we're seeing from Eberflus here against the Super Bowl champions. Like, I really do. Because this is the second time I've watched this game, and it's a lot different than what we saw against Arizona. It's just not working. And I think some of this might work with better dudes, but also it's going to work with there's going to be a lot more value to be had when your edge rushers are better at generating pass rush than the Colts edge rushers are. Because right now the Colts feel like if they don't blitz, they're not going to get anybody home. And if they do blitz, they still might not get anybody home, but at least they might. And so I'm sure this is a really hard spot for any defensive coordinator to be in. I mean, I know I've bemoaned what it's like for our defensive coordinators to play other offenses. Hopefully one of these days our offense can do the same to other defensive coordinators, but they generated incompletion because offenses have a bad habit of just hurting themselves. And look at this. This is actually, I think this is kind of funny. Just based on what we saw in the Super Bowl, right? Where the Colts deploy a solid defense right here that's going to force an incompletion because they play, what is this? Good to see you, Case. Great having you in. Let me know when you're free again. And let's see. So it looks like they just trot out cover 2, honestly, where they're going to have Okereke covering Cup with Leonard sitting there right there waiting for him. The corners maintain solid outside leverage, so he's just walking him down the file, safety ready to cut over. And the open guy is probably this running back, but he's going to drop it, right? So you take it. But so at that point, like, one thing that is kind of funny about this stuff is that you can kind of wait around for the offense to just sort of harm itself. And then Sean McVay being Sean McVay, like, this is a throwback to at least how I felt in the middle of the Super Bowl. He's just going to run it on 2nd and 10. And gosh, that running game's not going to get him anything. So now we're looking at 3rd down. Let's see if the Colts can make a stop. Because the funniest part about this is that as we watch this game, like, right, as we're talking about the Colts just getting punished, right? They're still only giving up about 3rd down. Or, like, they're still only giving up, that didn't make any sense. They're still only giving up 10 yards a pop, 15 yards a pop. These aren't 40 or 40-plus yard gains. So they're walking, like, the Colts down the field, sure. But all of a sudden, it's 3rd and 9, and they break up a play, and now we're looking at points off the board. No, it's not that huge victory. Like, in the wide world of, sure, you still gave up 3 points. I get there are plenty of people out there that would feel that way. But they finally cashed in on literally one series. Like, they had been, or I don't even know if they'd pulled the Rams to 3rd down in this drive. The Rams had just been owning them. But then they finally got their number for 3 plays in a row. And we're able, looks like, I mean, it's just cover 2 again. Like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 underneath with 2 like deep defenders. This game plan was much more like we're gonna throw everything at you, but it's all cover 2, especially by the midpoint. But so cover 2 here on 3rd down. Stafford can't find anything. Points off the board. Colts still in it. But there's a lot to get excited about here, I think, anyways. It's not like best defense ever, like we've kind of talked about, but a lot of the exotic looks that we're seeing and Eberflus's willingness to try stuff, scout out the opponent, and find things that work, I think are admirable. I mean, it's cool watching the way that we saw the second and third stringers get better, like between what we've seen here in the Rams game with guys just getting styled on by better matchups and what we saw against Arizona, where they were able to hold down a pretty good Arizona team to much, much less than they were probably like, certainly than they wanted, and come out with a win. I'm excited to see what happens. Like they've got a lot of things going for them. Well, by C5, Jordan, do you mean cover 2 man? Like, because I've heard it called both. Is that what you're thinking of? But because I don't know where the 5 comes from in that. I'm excited to see what comes next. I think Eberflus is a hire that is much easier to talk yourself into than, say, Dan Quinn. I mean, I was on that train trying to talk myself into Dan Quinn just in case. But I don't know what I would have done if Dan Quinn was the hire. I mean, like, that would have been some work, because that could have been a year's thing. But anyways, first down, probably a 1 high, or like try to get that extra guy in the box. Second down, usually cover 2 out of a 2 high setup. A lot of disguise on both. Third down, some sort of man off in a blitz. That was the general rule in the world of the Colts. And it's probably going to be the general rule with the Bears. I think that everything's going to come down to, let's call them the Power 5 Bears. Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, Eddie Jackson, Jalen Johnson, Roquan Smith. Not in that order. Not in the world of importance. Those 5 players are going to be what I think Eberflus is going to take this philosophy and dress down. Like, they're going to... that makes sense. But so they're going to figure out where to put everybody. I'm very intrigued to see where everybody goes, but we'll get better clues around free agency. Either way, for now, that'll about do it. So let me know if you've got any questions before we close up. It's late, but it's not 1 a.m, which is awfully nice for a 3-hour football stream. But I'll keep some playing in the back while we go about it. I think the trouble with watching this Colts team is that there are some really, really good players, like Kenny Moore being one of them, and there's some neat scheme things that they do. What I think is really impressive is just the execution piece of it. I would love to see the safeties play a little bit more aggressively, but at the same time, they break to the ball naturally. They don't seem like they're just out there, I don't know, figuring it out, for lack of a better word. And I love all the rotation that they do within this defense. There's a lot to like. And basically, they'll just not sit around, but you get the idea. This defense is one that will wait for the opponent in front of it to screw up, which that is something that I think does well in general. I mean, the Rams basically took that defensive identity and then just like squared it. So they went through and they took a bend don't break defense and really made it like, we are going to bend and we are not going to break, and just wait around for Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey to make plays for him. It worked. I mean, what is it? Aaron Donald made 2 straight plays, won a Super Bowl off the back of it. The Bears just need to have those guys, right? The Colts tried to find it with DeForest Buckner. The Colts tried to find it with all sorts of pass rushers at this point. But what I am really intrigued to see is, can they get their, at this point, the new Bears coaching staff get their star edge defenders to shine? Because if they can, I think that's really going to pop off. Let's see. Whitehair at center and Daniels on a cheaper 1-year deal for RG, or Jensen at center at a high price with Whitehair at left guard. It's a good question, Brandon. Personally, if I got to pick, I would pick Brian Allen or Ben Jones, because I think that you're going to get 90% of the same player as Jensen. Not quite the same, but a good veteran center for almost 60% of the price. Like, it's shocking how much of a discount I think there is there. Not to mention, I'm not crazy about Whitehair at center. Like, you can do that, right? But, With Daniels, I think Daniels is a good one to bring back. Depends on what the Bears feel like they're finding. Certainly, I think it all depends on his price. If he's trying to go get $10 million a year, I don't know. But yeah, okay, fine. Wasn't part of the question. I'll probably go Whitehair at C, Daniels on the cheaper deal at that point, just so that you don't, pour it on. I mean, I get it. Like, Jensen's attitude is awesome. I just know that the center position is one, at least in my estimation, of it's a very mental position. And I think you can get that same mental benefit from a guy like Ben Jones, Brian Allen. But that's just my 2 cents, right? I think Whitehair is, for as much as I would dog on him, I think Whitehair's a better center that some people remember. It's just a matter of whether he even wants to play the position at this point, because you don't necessarily want to just flip-flop him around all over the place. I do think that Daniels also seems like a solid person to bring back. It's just a matter of whether he's even willing to take a 1-year deal at this point in his career. But that's for somebody else to figure out, like in the cap room, or if he even wants to be a Bear at this point. I don't know. But my guess would be that he wants to test the market and bring home a big deal. So we'll see what happens. Thankfully, I do think that there are some really solid guard folks in the in this draft. I think whether it is Jamari Salyer, I think whatever. We can talk through it later, because there's also some tackles on the free agent market that certainly could be intriguing. But when I hear guys that I'm friends with talk about bringing in Trent Brown, I'm like, we can. But do we want to draft a tackle? We'll figure it out. We'll see. But I think that there's a lot to just sort of wait and see on. I think that if the Bears take a second round guard with wide receivers on the board, I'm going to have to take a deep breath. It's not that I hate guards. I like guards, guys. I like offensive line. Offensive line's a good thing. But offensive line is, to me anyways, right? I'll keep this rolling so you guys can see, because I just realized they're about to start again. To me, offensive line is about finding 5 guys that can establish a solid foundation. And then you need your weapons that are going to go out there and win you one-on-ones the same way that Jamar Chase did against Jalen Ramsey, for crying out loud. And I get it. There's that meme of, if Jamar Chase is wide open downfield but Burrow's on the ground, who cares? But I can't help but looking at, at this Bears draft, thinking if they are going to take a second rounder, especially at 39, there are some crazy good receivers. There are some really good receivers that will have no business being at 39, and there they will be. I want one of those. I want to trade down, like we talked about earlier. And if they take a guard at 54, I'm in. At 54, 56, 55, sure, let's do it. Grab yourself a tackle or somebody that you think projects well at guard, or would you believe it, Zion Johnson falls further than people think. You never know. But it would be a little bit of a bummer to see, say, Bell or George Pickens fall to 39, or even if they fell to 50 or something, Christian Watson, somebody like that, and the Bears pass on them to take a offensive lineman, which still leaves holes at the offensive line that we would otherwise need to address. We'll figure it all out. The bright side is we get free agency before the draft, so we can truly get to all this as we come. Nice stop here. I didn't take a look at it, but we'll have to see what happens. Either way, guys, always great talking to you. We had a great blast of 3 hours. Looks like we'll be back on next week talking about Luke Getsy. Thanks once again to Jason Records for the best donation we've ever received on this channel. Let me know in the comments section, whether in this chat channel or anything else, what you're looking for. Right now, I am heads down in draft stuff. You can expect, Jordan, you're going to know, you know this is coming. You follow me enough. But I'm going to try to see if I can't put together something on a lineman named Tyler Smith, who has just really spoken to me, if that makes sense. As far as drafting stuff, you guys are going to love him. I mean, he's just phenomenal film to watch, and I want to share what I've seen because he's special. I love watching him. But so Then we'll talk other draft stuff as we get closer to the draft. I want to be a little bit more involved. I think there's some cool content to be made there, even if it's not quite Bears related. Like, there's a tight end by the name of Trey McBride who's just awesome. I mean, so fun to watch. He was at the Senior Bowl and he did a great job. Like, really, really fun guy to just keep an eye on. So we'll wait and see. Let me know what you want to see, and I'll see how much I can put together. Streams are a great way for me to take a little bit less prep time than usual and just do it live and like have a great time answering questions, talking through everything. You know how it goes. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much for supporting. Like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new. I'll be here like all throughout the rest of the off season. We'll talk all sorts of different things. Until next time, everybody, bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with me.